Chapter 1060. Hu Feiyun chattered on. She was still the same as before, without any subtlety, innocent and romantic. She couldn't keep secrets at all. As long as she thought you were good, she would give her heart to you with just a few words, without holding anything back. However, probably knowing that this ninth king's personality was lacking, Empress Luanxing didn't let her know any secrets, and she couldn't get any secrets out of her. Ling Han once asked about the origins of the other 8 kings in a roundabout way, but Hu Feiyun was at a loss. She only knew that the 9 of them were like sisters to Empress Luanxing. As for why, she didn't know the slightest bit. The 9 kings all had different origins, different surnames and different appearances. The only thing they had in common was that they didn't have parents. It was as if they had appeared out of thin air, and were suddenly conferred the title of king. Then their cultivation levels exploded, and they became the cornerstone of the empire. In fact, Hu Feiyun didn't even remember the past. She only knew that for as long as she could remember, she had been with Empress Luanxing. She didn't know who her parents were, and she didn't have any curiosity about the inheritance of her clan. This caused Ling Han and Shui Yinyu's hearts to thump wildly as they listened. Thankfully, there were no female guards in the carriage. Otherwise, if Shui Yinyu told Empress Luanxing what she had said today, perhaps she would silence the 2 of them. Although they didn't find out any useful information, the origins of the 9 kings were a little too mysterious. This in itself might be a taboo that couldn't be touched. One had to know that aside from Hu Feiyun, the other 8 kings had all advanced into the heavenly body tier one after another. This was practically an inconceivable miracle. How could Empress Luanxing have the potential to reach the heavenly body tier when she was still in the mountain river tier? Even a genius like Ling Han had a very high possibility of dying along the way. It was also possible that he would encounter some barrier of cultivation level and never be able to cross it. Strange, very strange. Hu Feiyun was carefree. She didn't look like she was leading troops to battle at all. It was as if she were going on an outing. Her carriage had everything. A bedroom, a kitchen, and even a small garden. Because they didn't use a flight god tool, their speed naturally wasn't very fast. They spent a whole 2 months before finally leaving the chaotic star's majestic empire and entering the territory of the Eastern Rain Nation. In that instant, Ling Han felt that the power of the nation that had been enveloping him had disappeared. He could no longer receive the augmentation. Thankfully, only he and the 9th king could draw on the power of the nation of the chaotic star's majestic empire here. Thus, the effect on the entire army was practically zero. Ling Han had been working hard to refine the source of demonic power these past few days. Zhao Luan and Hu Feiyun's cultivation levels had both risen by leaps and bounds, and this made him feel pressured. This was the immortal realm after all. There were all kinds of strange and bizarre methods. He could not be satisfied with his current speed of advancement. With the help of the Black Tower, his refining speed had indeed increased considerably. He successfully broke through the late stage of the medium extreme and advanced into the peak stage of the medium extreme. His battle prowess had also risen to a whole new level. Unfortunately, in terms of refining the profound azure pill, he was still a little lacking. He was burning through a lot of money and was about to run out again. For a tier 4 divine pill, a single failure would result in a waste of several thousand true essence stones. Greetings, 9th King. After they entered the Eastern Rain Nation, the higher-ups of the Eastern Rain Nation naturally came out to welcome them. Hu Feiyun had seen this kind of scene many times, and did not have stage fright at all. She chatted cheerfully with the higher-ups of the Eastern Rain Nation, and then took the initiative to join the battle. In the beginning, the higher-ups of the Eastern Rain country were not satisfied. Although the chaotic star's majestic empire had sent out a king, this king's ability was too weak. He had not even entered into the Sun-Moon tier, so what use could such an elite be? If she joined the battle, not only would the pressure on the Eastern Rain Nation not be reduced, they would also have to spend a great deal of manpower to protect this king. Who did not know that the Empress treated the 9th king like a sister? If anything happened to the 9th king, it was guaranteed that the Golden Lion Nation or the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire would not need to act. The Empress would personally destroy them. Moreover, Hu Feiyun had only brought a group of mountain river tier cultivators. But thinking about it again, these mountain river tier cultivators were not simple. They were all future pillars of the empire, And there were also descendants of great clans. If anything happened to them, would the forces behind them not act? Then the Eastern Rain Nation would instantly have the support of countless forces. With this thought, the higher-ups of the Eastern Rain Nation immediately became happy. They hurriedly sent this army to the front lines of the battle, hoping that a few more people would die so that the Chaotic Star's majestic empire would send a stronger army. A few days later, the student army of the Scarlet Heaven Academy arrived at the shore of a large river. On the opposite side was the army of the Golden Lion Nation, facing off against the army of the Eastern Rain Nation across the river. This was a furious river, and the surging river possessed terrifying destructive power. According to legends, this furious river was created by a supreme elite with a sword. It contained the supreme sword intent of this elite, and it had not completely disappeared even after millions of years. Thus, this river could not be crossed by just anyone. A ferry had to be used to block the sword intent, and there had to be at least elites of the Sun Moon tier on guard. The Golden Lion Nation was only a majestic empire, and there were only about 100 elites of the Sun Moon tier. It was easier said than done to escort an army across the furious river. This was a natural barrier that prevented the Golden Lion Nation from further invading. However, at the same time, it would be difficult for the Eastern Rain Nation to recover their lost territory. This furious river would instead restrict them. The Academy's army set up camp here. However, the students did not mingle with the soldiers of the Eastern Rain Nation. Those who could enter the Scarlet Heaven Academy were all prodigies, so they naturally could not afford to offend these soldiers. One had to realize that this was only the army of a majestic empire, and there were not many Mountain River tier elites. Most of them were at the Shattering Void tier, the Heaven tier, and the Deity Transformation tier. After a few days, the two factions were not on good terms with each other, and they almost started fighting among themselves. There was nothing they could do, and the two armies could only split up. Usually, if you don't come to my place, I won't go to yours either. The Golden Lion Nation did not seem to be in a hurry to advance. Every day, they would only use catapults to throw a few fireballs over, causing a small commotion. They had no intention of crossing the river and attacking. On the other hand, the Eastern Rain Nation was anxious. If this continued, the territory north of the Furious River would really become the territory of the Golden Lion Nation. In the immortal realm, the most precious things were territory and subjects. These directly determined the power of a nation. The generals of the Eastern Rain Nation discussed with Hu Feiyun to launch a counterattack. I agree. The flap of the tent was lifted, and a valiant-looking man wearing a full suit of armor walked in. The armor was bright silver, and beneath the helmet was a handsome face. There was also black hair hanging down, and he looked very handsome. Xiaolun, why is he here? Zhao Luan half knelt on the ground, and said to the Ninth King, Your Highness, I have come under the orders of Great General Zhao. I have led a small group here to await your orders. A cold smile tugged at the corners of his lips. This was such a good opportunity, so how could he miss it? On the battlefield, it was very normal for anyone to die. In that case, Ling Han would stay here forever. Chapter 1061. Although Hu Feiyun didn't like Zhao Luan because of Ling Han, she was straightforward and didn't hold grudges, so she had long forgotten about Zhao Luan. She looked at him blankly and asked, Who are you? Who? Zhao Luan almost spat blood in anger. It's all because of you that I was humiliated by Ling Han, and you've even forgotten who I am. However angry he was, he didn't dare to lash out at Hu Feiyun. He could only say, I am Zhao Luan, the son of Great General Zhao. Oh, Hu Feiyun nodded, and didn't say anything else. Zhao Luan felt awkward. He couldn't stand up, but he also couldn't stand up. He could only say, I am willing to lead troops into battle and fight for glory for your highness. He took the opportunity to stand up as he said this. The general leading the troops of the Eastern Rain Nation was an elite of the Sun Moon tier, reaching the high extreme. He was 2 levels higher than Zhao Luan, so he didn't need to care about Zhao Luan. However, Zhao Luan was the only son of Great General Zhao, and this suggestion was exactly what he wanted. He quickly nodded and said, The heir is indeed brave, and has inherited Great General Zhao's glory. These words made Zhao Luan very satisfied. He always liked to compare himself with his father. However, although he was satisfied, he still pretended to be humble, and said no general is too kind. Hu Feiyun didn't mind. She didn't have the talent to lead troops into battle, so she was happy to have someone share the burden. Thus, she handed the command of the troops to Zhao Luan. In any case, he was a 7th-ranked general, so he was qualified to lead troops. Zhao Luan and the general of the Eastern Rain Nation began to discuss the various details of the deployment of troops. He wasn't an idiot and was deeply influenced by great General Zhao, so he was quite skilled in warfare. However, this was his first real battle after all, and there was still a huge gap between this and theory. However, he didn't care and was completely an armchair strategist. The general of the Eastern Rain Nation didn't care at all. As long as the soldiers of the academy died, that was what he wanted. Only then would the Chaotic Star's majestic empire send out more powerful troops. Otherwise, even if they could defeat the Golden Lion Nation, the Eastern Rain Nation would pay a heavy price. They formulated a strategy. Zhao Luan would lead the troops to launch a surprise attack and shake the Golden Lion Nation's formation. Then, the troops of the Eastern Rain Nation would take the opportunity to cross the river and deal a fatal blow to the Golden Lion Nation. After the discussion, Zhao Luan began to select the members of the assault team. Quality was more important than quantity. Moreover, if there were too many of them, the people on the other side of the river would definitely notice when they left the camp. Naturally, only the strongest students would be selected, and there would only be about 1,000 of them. In theory, Ling Han should not be qualified to be selected, but he was impressively in the list. Obviously, Zhao Luan wanted to push him into the fire pit. Although this was very blatant, no one could blame Zhao Luan afterwards. How could he be so picky when he was fighting for his country? After Shui Yinyu found out about this, she immediately went to look for Hu Feiyun to deny Zhao Luan's order. However, Ling Han shook his head. He wanted to go to the other side of the river. In the beginning, he did not know about the Golden Lion Nation's situation. However, he had obtained sufficient information over the past few days. The Golden Lion Nation's national strength was not stronger than the Eastern Rain Nation's. The two of them were at most on par. Hence, even if the Golden Lion Nation caught the Eastern Rain Nation off guard, it was impossible for the Golden Lion Nation to take down 14 cities consecutively. Unless it was the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire. However, the question was, why? To the two majestic empires, these two small majestic empires were both buffer zones. The significance of their existence was greater than annexation. This was also the reason why many small majestic empires could rely on and exist for a long time. However, if the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire made a move, then why? Could it be that they intended to start an all-out war with the Chaotic Star's Majestic Empire? Moreover, the Golden Lion Nation suddenly stopped moving after attacking the Furious River. Although this was a natural barrier, Ling Han felt that the Golden Lion Nation seemed to intend to occupy the territory to the north of the Furious River. After attacking this area, they lost interest and did not want to go any further. Could it be that the Golden Lion Nation did not know that the Chaotic Star's Majestic Empire would not allow the Eastern Rain Nation to be annexed? As long as the Chaotic Star's Majestic Empire sent troops, they would sooner or later spit out the territory that they had taken. Then what was the point of starting such a war? Unless, the Golden Lion Nation's goal was not territory from the start. As for what it was, Ling Han naturally did not know. He could only find out if he went to investigate. Thus, Ling Han did not object to joining the assault team. After all, he was now a soldier and could go wherever he wanted. However, joining the assault team was different. He could pretend to be separated from the team, and he could enter deep into the enemy's territory to investigate. With the Black Tower in hand, Ling Han was not worried about the issue of safety. He carefully analyzed the situation for Shui Yinyu. Shui Yinyu knew that she could not stop him, so she could only nod in agreement. Follow the Ninth King closely. If you encounter any danger, you will be able to turn misfortune into fortune, Ling Han instructed. Now that he and Shui Yinyu were both soldiers, they could not act on their own without orders. Otherwise, they would be punished by military law. Shui Yinyu was surprised. Although Hu Feiyun's status was noble, her battle prowess was not very strong. Believe me, if you encounter any danger, then all the more you cannot leave the Ninth King's side. The power that this woman can unleash is beyond your imagination. Ling Han only gave this advice, but did not reveal the truth. After all, He had almost been killed by Empress Luan Xing. It was better not to let Shui Yinyu know, and cause trouble for nothing. Shui Yinyu nodded gently. Wife, why don't we have a monkey? What if I don't come back? Ling Han began to get touchy. Shui Yinyu instantly rolled her eyes at him, and said in annoyance, don't jinx it. She pushed Ling Han away, twisted her slender waist and ran away. On a high ground outside the tent, Zhao Luan stood with his hands clasped behind his back. With the strength of his divine sense, he could naturally envelop every corner of the military camp. A cold smile involuntarily appeared on his face. This time Ling Han could forget about coming back alive. After a night of rest, Zhao Luan set off with his troops early the next morning. They would take a detour to avoid the Golden Lion Nation's eyes and ears, cross the Furious River, and then use the cover of night to launch a sneak attack on the Golden Lion Nation's army. Although the weak light at night didn't affect cultivators much, ordinary people were used to resting at night. Thus, if they wanted to launch a sneak attack, it would be better to do it at night. A team of 1,000 elite soldiers set off, and after traveling a few hundred kilometers, they began to cross the river. There was a total of 5 military boats, and each boat could accommodate 100 people. After 10 trips, everyone arrived at the other side of the Furious River. After crossing the river, everyone exclaimed in surprise. This was because the land here was actually exuding a strong aura of death. The land was barren, and all the flowers and trees had withered. In fact, they couldn't even hear the sound of insects underground. In the sky, not a single bird flew past for a long time. This was a land of death through and through. This place is too strange. Shouldn't we first report this situation? A student asked. He belonged to the Zhao faction in the first place, and thus dared to speak at a time like this. Chapter 1062. Zhao Luan frowned as well. This place had actually turned into a land of death. This was completely out of his expectations. What on earth happened here? Although he had learned a lot of war experience, it was all on paper. His actual combat experience was limited to individual battles. Now that he had suddenly encountered such a situation that he had never heard of, he was stunned. Prince, the situation isn't right. I suggest that we give up on the original plan and not advance rashly. Another student advised. He was also from the Zhao faction. Zhao Luan pondered for a moment, but firmly shook his head and said, no, continue to act according to the plan. In any case, we will launch a sneak attack at night. When the time comes, the army will attack together. There is no need to go back and report at all. This was his first time leading an army, so how could he give up halfway? Moreover, he hated Ling Han to the bone. How could he let go of such a good opportunity that he had gone through so much trouble? They bided their time and waited until nightfall before attacking. Time passed quickly. When the moon was high up in the sky, they moved stealthily toward the Golden Lion Nation's army. They were only a small group, and there was only one Sun Moon tier elite among them. Thus, they naturally didn't expect to cause much damage. Their goal was to cause chaos in the Golden Lion Nation's army, so that the Eastern Rain Nation's army could cross the river easily. As long as they could take control of Nujiang, it would be equivalent to blowing the horn of a counterattack. Otherwise, with the existence of this natural stronghold, it would be easy to defend and hard to attack for either side. In the dark of the night, the 1,000-man army approached the Golden Lion Nation's military camp like ghosts. Even at night, this place was brightly lit. Huge torches were set up around the camp. However, the assault team's attack was only a surprise attack to shake the army's formation. Kill! Zhao Luan gave the order. Immediately, everyone charged out, launching a ferocious attack. Although over 1,000 people was not a large number, they were all at the mountain river tier. Like ferocious tigers that had been released from their cage, they charged toward the army camp ahead. In the process of charging, they even let out thunderous roars. Their intention was to intimidate this army and make them panic. At the same time, it was also a signal to the other side of Nujiang that they could attack. True enough, 1,000 mountain river tier cultivators roared in unison, and the sound waves formed were enough to shock shattering void tier cultivators to the point of vomiting blood. It was as if the tents had encountered a level 10 hurricane, and a large number of them collapsed. The entire Golden Lion Nation's army immediately fell into a state of panic. Under the impact of the terrifying sound waves, the commander's orders could not be effectively conveyed. They were like dragons without a leader. Humph! With a cold snort, a golden-armored general appeared. He stood on a flagpole, and his body was 30 feet tall. The exposed parts of his armor were actually flowing with bright red lava. The soldiers of the Golden Lion Nation immediately calmed down. It was as if with this person around, all difficulties could be easily resolved. Lu Qing was the great general of the Golden Lion Nation. His title was Crimson Flame, and he was the god of the Golden Lion Nation's army. He had led his troops in 109 battles, and he had only suffered defeat in 7 of them. He was the soul of the army. As long as he was there, the army would be as steady as Mount Tai. They're just a bunch of small fries. What's there to panic about? Lu Qing said disdainfully, his voice rumbling to every corner. Yes, the soldiers of the Golden Lion Nation roared. There was no longer a shred of panic. They all raised their weapons and charged toward the assault battalion. Although there weren't many elites at the Mountain River tier, their morale wasn't the slightest bit inferior. The battle was about to erupt. Because the students of the Scarlet Heaven Academy possessed a much higher battle prowess, they naturally had the upper hand in the first clash. However, as more and more elites joined in, the battle became more balanced. After all, there were at least a few thousand elites at the Mountain River tier in this army. Ling Han only defended and he didn't attack. This wasn't his battle, and he didn't have any enmity with the Golden Lion Nation or the Eastern Rain Nation. Thus, there was no need for him to kill innocent people. However, it was precisely because he hadn't revealed his strength that he hadn't been attacked by elites. He didn't feel any pressure at all. At the same time, he was still thinking about the situation here. Why was there an aura of death everywhere? The goal of any nation was to conquer, not to kill. However, not only had the people here died, but even the flowers, birds, insects, and ants had all died. Why was this happening? Suddenly, a strong sense of danger welled up in his heart. He hurriedly leaped to the left. Pooh! The ground where he had been standing suddenly exploded, and a terrifying force soared into the sky, shredding the soldier who had been fighting with him into pieces. This force had come from underground, and it was still so powerful even through a medium like the Earth. This definitely wasn't a sneak attack from a Mountain River tier, but a Sun Moon tier. If it was an elite from the enemy's side, why would there be a need for a sneak attack? This was a battle between 2 armies in the first place, so they could just charge over and fight. Then, there was only one possibility. The one who had attacked was Zhao Lun. Ling Han walked toward Zhao Lun. This person was currently engaged in a fierce battle with Lu Qing, and when his gaze landed on Zhao Lun, he saw that the latter was also looking back at him, a menacing killing intent in his eyes. Without a doubt, it was definitely him who had attacked. Strange, he was actually able to fight evenly with Lu Qing. Ling Han could clearly see that there were 2 suns and moons floating behind Lu Qing, which meant that his cultivation level was in the late stage of the medium extreme of the Sun-Moon tier, and Zhao Luan had clearly just advanced into the Sun-Moon tier, so that Red Sun was pitifully small. The gap between them was at least 7 stars, but Zhao Luan was clearly only a 4-star genius, and he couldn't draw on power of the nation here. So how could he make up for this gap of 3 stars of battle prowess? Could it be that he had suddenly become a 7-star genius? No. Ling Han immediately realized that the armor on Zhao Luan's body was exuding a divine light, as if this armor was the real warrior, and Zhao Luan was merely a puppet. A precious treasure. Definitely a precious treasure. A mere armor actually increased Zhao Luan's battle prowess by 3 stars. This was truly astonishing. This guy couldn't leave behind any evidence of his crimes, so he had launched a sneak attack from the shadows. Thankfully, Ling Han reacted quickly. Otherwise, if he had been struck by this attack, he would probably have been severely wounded even with his physique. Ha ha ha. It's time to completely deal with these trash. Amidst long laughter, another few hundred elites appeared, all with suns and moons floating behind them. Gasp! Several hundred Sun-Moon tier elites. One had to realize that even if all the Sun-Moon tier elites of the Golden Lion Nation were added up, there would only be over 100 of them. Yet now, several hundred such elites had appeared. What did this mean? Ling Han was instantly startled. These were elites from the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire. The situation here was already extremely strange in the first place, and now that the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire had appeared, it naturally made him think that the Golden Lion Nation's invasion this time was completely inspired by the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire. However, why had this place become a land of death again? Chapter 1064. The Azura Demon Emperor was somewhat similar to this murderous aura. They didn't have a physical form, and were more of a spiritual level. Back then, the Azura Demon Emperor didn't die even after being cut into pieces. If it was another immortal, even if they were much stronger than him, they couldn't do it. However, the Azura Demon Emperor was most afraid of spiritual attacks. As long as the strength of one's divine sense was stronger than his, spiritual secret techniques could cause great damage to him. This murderous aura was obviously like that, and its attack was biased towards the divine sense. The Azura Demon Emperor retched, but he was in the form of mist, so how could he vomit anything out? After vomiting for a while, he returned to the puppet wolf's body, and said, "Master, this thing is quite troublesome. You have to cultivate the toughness of your divine sense," Ling Han said. It sounded simple, but there were pitifully few cultivation techniques that cultivated the toughness of the divine sense in this world, and those that existed were in the hands of a few demon masters. Ordinary people could only strengthen their divine sense, but it was far too difficult to improve their toughness. It was just like how body cultivation was easy. Body refining techniques weren't everywhere, but there were still ways to obtain them. However, cultivation techniques that strengthened the physique were extremely rare. The Azura Demon Emperor naturally didn't dare to say this out loud, and could only grumble in his mind. However, he was curious. This master was really nature-defying. Not only was his physique so strong, but his divine sense was also incredibly tough. What secret technique did he cultivate? One man and one wolf continued forward. The murderous aura here was centered around an area, and continuously gathered. When this amount reached a certain level, it could condense into a humanoid aura. Soon, another humanoid aura appeared, and began to attack Ling Han. It shrieked, and although no sound could be heard, it went straight into his mind, causing waves that were tens of thousands of meters high. A battle of divine sense? Do you think I'm afraid of you? Ling Han also attacked with the 7 kills subduing soul technique. Pooh! The humanoid aura was instantly shattered into countless pieces. They wanted to fuse together but seemed to have lost their stickiness, and couldn't reassemble no matter what. As expected, this thing was good at spiritual attacks, but its weakness was also its divine sense. Once he surpassed it in this aspect, he could easily defeat it. Ling Han waved his hand, and the evil chi fragments immediately turned into countless pieces, drifting in all directions. Master, you're really too mighty. In this world, whether it's the previous epoch or the next epoch, you're definitely the strongest prodigy, the Azura Demon Emperor exclaimed. Ling Han chuckled and said, "Since I'm so great, you as my little brother can't be too weak. I'll leave the first opponent to you." Okay. The Azura Demon Emperor was just about to slap his chest and promise, yet when his gaze swept over the area ahead of him, he was so scared that he clamped his tail between his legs. This was because the figure of the murderous being that had appeared ahead of him was much larger than before. Along the way they had killed quite a few evil men. They knew that the bigger the evil men were, the more evil chi they had, and the stronger they were. Now, with a single roar from this beast, not only would he be shaken out of the carrier, but his entire body would be torn apart. Even though his life structure was special, and being split into pieces wasn't a problem, who would be willing to be split into pieces for no reason? It wouldn't hurt. "Master, save me!" The Azura Demon Emperor hurriedly screamed. Although he had the puppet wolf as a carrier, and his battle prowess was as high as the late stage of the consummate level, these evil men were like his nemesis. They specialized in spiritual attacks, and his powerful physique was useless. Ling Han tried to use the Black Tower to collect them, but though these evil men weren't living things, they possessed the will of martial art. They were like god tools, and he had to first erase the will of martial art within them. But without the support of the will of martial art, these evil chi naturally wouldn't exist anymore. Thus, the Black Tower wouldn't be of any use. Ling Han unleashed the 7 kills subduing soul technique, and the head of that evil man immediately exploded. However, the other parts of its body were still intact. A shocking scene appeared. This evil man plucked off its own head, and then the murderous aura surged, and a new head grew out from its body. It didn't have a fixed form in the first place, and it could reassemble itself even after being cut into a dozen or so pieces. This was naturally a piece of cake. This one is a bit more powerful. Ling Han attacked again, activating the 7 kills subduing soul technique and divine patterns of flame at the same time. Both of these were excellent methods to deal with evil men. The evil man didn't wait for death, either, and began a fierce battle with Ling Han. Its attacks contained a spiritual attack, and one's divine sense would feel as if it had been pricked by a needle. It was incredibly uncomfortable. It took Ling Han some effort to finally defeat this evil man, and he also felt a bit strained. It was as if he had just fought a great battle with a powerful enemy. Master is mighty, master is domineering. The Azura demon emperor flattered. They continued forward, and after destroying some more evil men, a giant evil man that was 9 meters tall suddenly appeared in front of them. Not to mention the Azura demon emperor, who was so scared that his eyes were popping out. Even Ling Han frowned. There was too much murderous aura. The giant evil man attacked, and as it struck out with its palm, a spiritual attack spread out and actually materialized, causing the ground to tremble. Ling Han didn't plan to fight at all. He grabbed the tail of the puppet wolf and he entered the Black Tower with the Azura demon emperor. Boom! The giant evil man struck out with its palm, raising a cloud of dust. It was a bit confused. Where was its opponent? The Black Tower moved with the force, and like the other dust particles, it floated into the distance. Ling Han immediately exited the Black Tower and broke into a run. There was no point in fighting with the evil men here. If he fought with demonic beasts, he could still hope to obtain spiritual flesh, which was a great tonic, but what was the point of fighting with this murderous aura? Then what was he going to fight? Ling Han sprinted, and when he encountered the evil men, he would dodge if he could, and if he couldn't, he would slice them apart with his sword, taking advantage of the time when the murderous aura was reforming to pass through. However, the deeper they ventured into this crimson land, the stronger the murderous aura became. In the end, there were even gigantic murderous figures that were 30 meters tall everywhere. Even Ling Han didn't have the confidence to battle them, and began to hide from a great distance. This kind of evil man's spiritual attack was comparable to the Sun-Moon tier, and even Ling Han wasn't strong enough. In front of him a mountain appeared. Ling Han immediately shook his head. It wasn't a mountain, but rather a sacrificial altar. However, because it was too tall, he thought it was a mountain at first glance. This sacrificial altar was really tall, at least 3,000 meters tall. It was in the shape of a 3-sided cone, and was built from stones that were even larger than houses. It was completely red, and under the night sky it looked like a giant beast that was crawling. Why did he think this was an altar? Because he smelled a strong scent of blood. It definitely wasn't the blood of thousands or tens of thousands of living beings, but at least 1 million. In fact, the stones that formed the sacrificial altar weren't white, but had been dyed red by blood. Beside the sacrificial altar, there was a mountainous pile of corpses. Although it wasn't as tall as the sacrificial altar, it was as wide as 50 kilometers. The number of millions was really an understatement and was at least 10 times that. What was the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire trying to do? Chapter 1065. Boom boom boom. At least a dozen giant humanoid auras surrounded him. Ling Han hurriedly hid in the Black Tower, and then moved with the wind. Coincidentally, he was actually drifting in the direction of the sacrificial altar. He noticed that there was a group of carriages approaching from the distance. These carriages were prison carriages. Each prison carriage was astonishingly large, and some were even several meters tall. All kinds of powerful demonic beasts were locked inside. These demonic beasts roared in the prison carriages, and some even roared with divine sense, cursing. Not only were there powerful demonic beasts, but there were also ordinary wild beasts and even humans. They were all treated like livestock, and were being transported toward the sacrificial altar. Was this a blood sacrifice? The carriage naturally encountered attacks from the humanoid auras along the way, but when the humanoid auras charged over, multiple divine patterns lit up on the carriage, interweaving into a brilliant light. Pung pung pung. The humanoid auras were all bounced back. This should be the work of a heavenly body tier elite. Some humanoid auras had almost reached the peak stage of the sun-moon tier, but were still defeated with a single strike, so the level of these divine patterns should have reached the heavenly body tier. He had to be careful. There was a talisman stuck on the carriage, and it was this talisman that was glowing, forming the divine patterns. The carriage continued forward, and the humanoid auras couldn't stop it at all. A bold idea appeared in Ling Han's mind, and he suddenly appeared from the Black Tower. Wang demonic qi immediately intertwined on his body, completely concealing his figure. Now anyone who saw him would not be able to recognize him, and in future they would not be able to connect him with his current appearance. Xiao xiao xiao. After a few leaps, Ling Han caught up to the prison carriage, and directly pounced on it. On the carriage, a driver said coldly, "You're courting death." He didn't even have the intention to attack. There was a decree of a heavenly body tier on the carriage, so how could a mountain river tier cultivator approach it? Although this mountain river tier cultivator was indeed a bit strange, with black qi all over his body, exuding an indescribable evil, in front of the decree of a heavenly body tier cultivator, he was nothing. He would be directly shattered into pieces by the power of the decree. The driver was stunned. He had clearly seen that person pounce, so why had he suddenly disappeared? No wonder it was shaken into pieces. Not even a piece of flesh was left. He was a bit puzzled, but the baleful aura here was so strong that if he were to be blasted into pieces of flesh and blood, it would be hard to distinguish them from the baleful aura. "Big Metal Head, what's the situation?" someone asked loudly from a carriage behind. "I just saw a black shadow pouncing at your carriage." "It's fine, a mountain river tier cultivator could be a fish that slipped through the net, and should have been shattered into pieces by His Majesty's decree," the coachman called Big Metal Head answered. "Haha, does this thief want to open the prison carriage and release the prisoners to create chaos? He's too naive. With His Majesty's decree, no matter who comes, it'll be useless." The driver laughed. "That's right." Big Metal Head nodded and drove forward again, no longer paying attention to the figure that arrived earlier. Ling Han sat quietly. The instant he pounced on the carriage, he entered the Black Tower, and just happened to land inside the carriage. The Black Tower was impervious to all techniques, so it obviously wouldn't be obstructed by the decree's divine light. There were over a dozen prisoners in this carriage, and they were all mountain river tier demonic beasts. There was a fierce tiger with 4 eyes, a bull's head and snake's body, and a giant golden goat, but their bodies were all compressed by a secret technique, so they were about the same size as normal wild beasts. Their cultivation was all restrained, and although they possessed great power inside their bodies, they couldn't circulate it, and all of them revealed expressions of fury and despair. At this tier, there was no difference in intelligence between demonic beasts and humans. They obviously knew that this was an altar, and they were the sacrifices. This made them furious, making them roar, but they stopped after a while. Despair. The carriage slowly drove into the altar. There was a passage at the bottom, enough for these carriages to pass through easily. It was astonishingly spacious. The surrounding environment became dark. There were torches in the passage, but they weren't bright enough, making the environment oppressive and gloomy. The passage soon came to an end, and the area ahead suddenly became clear. The inside of this altar was hollow, and the trihedron was divided into multiple prison cells. The path was winding, stretching from the bottom all the way to the top, layer upon layer densely packed. The majority of the prison cells were occupied by humans or demonic beasts, and some were empty. The bottom of the altar had been hollowed out, and it was unknown how deep it was because it was filled with dark red blood. Even inside the Black Tower, Ling Han seemed to be able to smell a strong scent of blood. Even if the bottom of this altar hadn't been dug very deep, just to cover this layer would require an incalculable amount of blood. No wonder there were so many corpses outside. This was really a massacre. There was a faint light flickering in the pool of blood, or it could even be called a lake of blood, exuding an astonishing chill. The lake of blood surged, and a giant demonic beast was thrown down from above. Its head had been chopped off, and its corpse fell into the lake of blood, stirring up waves. But very soon someone fished out its corpse and tossed it to one side. One by one, the prison cells were opened, and the humans and demonic beasts transported in carriages were placed inside. Then the corpses were placed inside. Later, they would be transported out of the altar, and the corpses would be discarded after they were sent outside. Ling Han took advantage of the chaos to get off the carriage, and then hid in the Black Tower, waiting for everyone to leave. Amidst the screams, the massacre continued. One after another, demonic beasts and one after another were thrown down from the top of the altar, falling into the lake of blood. And the new prisoners all roared loudly because of this, banging hard on the iron bars of the prison cells, but the old men were numb and had no reaction at all. The carriages left with the corpses piled high. Later, there would be a second and third batch of carriages coming, bringing new sacrifices and taking away the corpses that had been sacrificed. Chapter 1066. Ew. That person trembled in fear. What kind of dog was this? Its face was so ferocious, and it was clearly a mechanical beast, yet it could speak the human language and act like a villain. He couldn't accept it. You what you? The Azura Demon Emperor smacked the person's head with his paw. I'm the great little Azura, and this is my master, an even greater existence. Now my master wants to ask you something and you answer whatever you know. Otherwise, I'll bite off your limbs first and then eat your fifth. That person instantly felt a chill in his crotch, and involuntarily tightened his legs. He felt that this large dog was so ruffian and savage, actually wanting to eat his manhood. However, after being frightened, that person became obedient. Being strangely controlled, appearing in such a strange place, and being threatened by the Azura Demon Emperor, his willpower had already collapsed. Why did you build this altar? Ling Han went straight to the point. That person stammered. He immediately screamed because one of his arms had already been bitten off by the Azura Demon Emperor. The Azura Demon Emperor was not a kind person. He was a person of the netherworld in the first place, and in his eyes the beings of the immortal realm were no different from ants. He did not take them seriously at all. Thus, to say nothing of biting off an arm, he would not care even if he were to bite off the other party's neck. That person saw the Azura Demon Emperor's wolf eyes stare at his other arm, and was scared out of his wits. He hurriedly said, "It's to use a blood sacrifice to dispel the murderous aura of a treasure below, or else it can't be obtained, huh?" Ling Han was slightly surprised and said, "This operation this time was inspired by your emperor, right?" Yes, it was His Majesty's decree. Since that person had relented, he no longer had any intention of resisting, and answered honestly, "There's a decree and an army, which means that your emperor values this treasure very much, yet did not personally come to retrieve it. This means that even your emperor has no way to retrieve it, and must first use the method of blood sacrifice to dispel that murderous aura, and only then can he retrieve it," Ling Han deduced. Pa 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 pa. The Azura Demon Emperor immediately started clapping his claws, and said, "Master is wise, Master is wise. Master is my little Azura's red sun, and you illuminate my path of light." Ah! The captive let out a scream of agony. He looked innocently at the Azura Demon Emperor. "Why did you bite me for no reason? My master has made such a wise and brilliant judgment, yet you actually dare not applaud? Do you want to rebel?" The Azura Demon Emperor widened his wolfish eyes, looking like a fiend. The captive couldn't help but feel sullen. Right now, if he had unmatched power, the first thing he would suppress wouldn't be Ling Han, but rather this lowly dog. He was just too fucking evil. "What kind of treasure is it?" Ling Han asked. "I don't know." The captive shook his head. "Ah!" He screamed in agony. His other arm was suddenly bitten off by the Azura Demon Emperor. "I really don't know," he hurriedly cried out. He didn't want to have his legs bitten off again. "Master, he really doesn't know," the Azura Demon Emperor said as he turned to Ling Han. The captive was extremely resentful. "Aren't you too quick to draw your saber at the slightest disagreement?" Thankfully, after advancing into the immortal level, regrowing severed limbs was a piece of cake. He only needed a bit of time. Additionally, if he was wounded by an elite, and the other party's martial art intent was left in the wound, it would be impossible to regrow before it was expelled. Ling Han propped his chin in contemplation. The Azura Demon Emperor didn't dare to disturb him, and hurriedly signaled for the captive to move to the side. He was going to start the second round of interrogation, and asked the captive everything he knew to curry favor with Ling Han. The Eternity Sky Emperor had used the invasion of the Golden Lion Nation as a cover for the treasure buried below. Since the other party had gone to such great lengths, it was clear that the significance of this treasure was definitely extraordinary. On his way here, everything within 500 kilometers had been turned into barren land. All living beings had been killed, and they had probably all been captured as sacrifices. Not only humans and beasts, but even living things like plants and trees couldn't escape this calamity. Even in the eyes of immortals, ordinary people were only ants, but such actions could still be called deranged. No wonder the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire had to seal off the furious river to prevent this matter from leaking out. Otherwise, it would definitely draw the wrath of the Chaotic Star's Majestic Empire. But paper couldn't wrap fire, and this matter would come to light sooner or later. Then Ling Han came up with two possibilities. Firstly, the treasure here was sufficiently precious that the Eternity Sky Emperor was willing to bear this kind of infamy, and even risk starting a war with two majestic empires to obtain it. Secondly, this treasure was a supreme god tool. As long as he obtained it, the Eternity Sky Emperor's battle prowess would be able to crush all living beings. Then, even if the truth came to light, only he would be able to suppress others. Who could resist him? In the end, this world was still ruled by the strong. When one's strength could crush others, what need was there to care about the laws of others? Would others dare to have laws? This isn't good. Such a blood sacrifice technique is simply insane, and it would infuriate the heavens and the people. Yet, the Eternity Sky Emperor actually did it. This shows that his scheme far exceeds the price of being attacked by the joint forces of the two great majestic empires. We must destroy it. Ling Han clapped his hands, coming to a decision. The best method was to snatch the treasure here first. That way, the Eternity Sky Emperor would only have worked for nothing. But even the Eternity Sky Emperor had to use the method of blood sacrifice to dispel the murderous aura of this treasure before talking about obtaining it. So what right did he have to obtain it first? Just the murderous aura that seeped out from the outside could condense into a human form and attack one's spirit. Then how terrifying was the murderous aura that the treasure itself exuded? Was it something that Ling Han could withstand with his current strength? If there were absolute beginning stones, then I could still give it a try. Ling Han couldn't help but sigh inwardly. He had the urge to capture Empress Luanxing and give her a good spanking. As this thought flashed through his mind, he couldn't help but smile bitterly. It was over. Unknowingly, the figure of this empress had already been planted in his heart, and she would always find a way to appear. She was practically a vixen, and an extra large one at that. If I can't obtain the treasure first, then I'll create great chaos and release all the prisoners here, disrupting the rhythm of the blood sacrifice. Then, I'll immediately flee and send the news back to the imperial capital for Empress Luanxing to personally deal with it. King against king, a battle at this level is not something that I can participate in. His current fate was already linked with the Chaotic Star's majestic empire. If the Eternity Sky Emperor really became invincible, then Joint Peace Planet would face a great power reshuffle, which also meant that power would be completely centralized, and there would be no more checks and balances. A genius like him would be in danger. The last thing a dictator wanted was the possibility that someone might challenge his rule. Moreover, he still had the Great Ling Empire to manage, so he couldn't let it fall into the hands of others. It's decided then. Ling Han's figure flashed, and he exited the Black Tower. There was only one person patrolling this floor, so though that person had disappeared, if he really drew attention, it would be his turn to change shifts. He appeared in front of a cage, drew out his divine sword, and cut open the metal door with a series of clanking sounds. Then he broke into a smile and said to the prisoners inside, "Does anyone want to leave?" Chapter 1068. The entire altar was in a state of chaos. One after another, powerful demonic beasts rushed out. One after another, martial artists erupted with divine might. They had been imprisoned and were about to become sacrifices, but now they had a chance to live. Taking a step back, even if they couldn't make it out alive, They still wanted to kill as many enemies as possible. At the very least, they didn't want to die in such a sullen manner. Thus, these prisoners had turned into ferocious tigers that had been released from their cages. They bared their sharp teeth and completely unleashed their ferocious nature and killing intent. "Brat, it's you." One of the guards finally caught Ling Han and the dog in the middle of destroying the prison, and he shouted angrily. This was ruining His Majesty's plans, so he had to bear the consequences. "Go die." He slammed out with his palm, and it was as if a mountain was crushing down on him. The attack didn't even land, but Ling Han felt as if he was about to be flattened by that terrifying aura. Sun Moon Tear, I can't fight him head-on, he thought. He grabbed the small dog and he hid inside the black tower. Pung! He struck out with his palm, but it did not hit anything. What? The guard cried out in alarm. He was the leader of this place and could be said to be the prison warden. He was responsible for all of the sacrificial offerings, yet the main culprit had actually disappeared into thin air. How was he supposed to explain this to the Eternity Sky Emperor in the future? This was something His Majesty had personally instructed him to do. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but tremble, cold sweat dripping down. So what if he was at the medium extreme of the Sun Moon tier? In front of Heavenly Body tier elites, he was nothing more than an ant. What more when the Eternity Sky Emperor was a supreme elite at the consummate level of the Heavenly Body tier? He could kill him hundreds of times with a single glance. Inside the Black Tower, the Azura Demon Emperor stared at the puppy, his expression filled with hostility. This was too hateful. It was actually a dog. Wasn't it trying to steal his business? The small dog, however, was extremely proud and completely ignored the Azura Demon Emperor. It only looked curiously around the environment inside the Black Tower, and there was an obvious expression of shock on its face. Anyone who entered the Black Tower for the first time would be shocked. The Azura Demon Emperor couldn't help but ask, "Master, is this stupid dog your new pet?" "No." Ling Han shook his head. "He's just staying here for a while. He'll leave soon." Only then did the Azura Demon Emperor feel as if a great burden had been lifted from his shoulders, and he no longer had to worry that his task would be snatched by someone else. They were in the Black Tower, but the guard still hadn't left. It was as if he was certain that Ling Han had used some method to hide in the shadows, and he just hadn't found him yet. There was a huge commotion at the altar. The prisoners that had been liberated by Ling Han numbered in the tens of thousands, and they were basically all at the Mountain River tier. Together they were a powerful force. Who would have thought that these prisoners whose cultivation levels had been suppressed could still rebel? The defenses here were not strong enough, and they were instantly breached. However, at this moment, a frightening aura swept over, and everyone was sent sprawling on the ground. Even if Ling Han was inside the Black Tower, he still felt an indescribable palpitation. A master is coming. After a while, a tall man walked out of the passageway. He wore a black cloak that fluttered even though there was no wind. 9 flames danced behind him, forming a circle. Every streak of flame was filled with an intimidating power. Even a Sun Moon tier elite would be filled with boundless fear when they saw it. If they came into contact with the slightest bit of these flames, they would instantly be burned to ashes. This was an elite of the Heavenly Body tier. True enough, this place was too important. There was actually an elite of the Heavenly Body tier standing guard nearby. When he discovered that there was a commotion at the altar, he rushed over to suppress it. In front of such an elite, what was the use even if there were tens of thousands of Mountain River tier cultivators? One look, one aura, and they could completely suppress them. The gap was so wide that it could no longer be described with words. "Greetings, Your Highness." The remaining guards all knelt down, respectfully paying their respects. "Your Highness." Ling Han's heart moved. The Eternity Sky Majestic Empire did not have many kings, and there was only one, and that was the Eternity Sky Emperor's younger brother, Chong Tao, who was known as the 9 Flames Heavenly King. It was said that his cultivation level had reached the high extreme of the Heavenly Body tier. The 9 Flames Heavenly King really lived up to his name. 9 divine flames danced behind him, and this was his strongest killing move. Hiss, even the Eternity Sky Emperor's younger brother was standing guard here, which showed how much importance the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire placed on this treasure. With a casual wave of the 9 Flames Heavenly King, cultivators and demonic beasts were all flung into the air by him, and then killed. Fresh blood splattered and life essence was absorbed by the altar, feeding it to whatever treasure underground, using life essence to dispel the murderous aura. He was too powerful, and there was absolutely no one that could resist the power of a wave of his hand. A large amount of life essence filled the altar. If one cultivated here, it would be no less than a holy land. However, whoever did so would definitely become the public enemy of the entire immortal realm. This was too deranged. Thus, sects like the Heaven Sword Palace and the other sects would secretly use the lower realm as a cauldron. They would refine it once every 10,000 years and obtain a few realm pills. This was an extremely nourishing item, and was even beneficial to Genesis tiers. However, the effects were limited. Under the suppression of the aura of the heavenly body tier, the living beings here could not even let out a scream, and were killed one after another as blood sacrifice. His Majesty's plan definitely cannot be disrupted by anyone, the Nine Flames Heavenly King said darkly. Though his voice was not loud, it spread to every corner, and everyone could hear it clearly. Yes, Your Highness, the guards answered respectfully again. Now tell me, why did the prisoners here run away? The Nine Flames Heavenly King asked coldly. These people had all had their cultivation sealed. They were merely in the mountain river tier, and with their own power, they would not be able to remove the seal in their entire lives. The guards were all silent. They really could not explain it either. Are you all trash? The Nine Flames Heavenly King flew into a rage. Such a riot had already occurred, but these people actually did not know what was going on? Your Highness, I have thought of a possibility. A guard ran over. It was precisely the prison warden. Speak. Yes. The prison warden hurriedly recounted the events of his previous encounter with Ling Han. The Nine Flames Heavenly King had casually grabbed a prisoner, smacked him to death and read his soul. Because the incident had only happened for a short while, he only had to find the end, and very soon, he discovered the scene of Ling Han rescuing the prisoner. He had tossed that prisoner into the lake of blood, and then grabbed another prisoner to read his soul. 1, 2, 3, and the memories he had obtained were all the same. Who is this person? The Nine Flames Heavenly King was astonished. From the memories of these people, he knew that the person who had rescued the prisoners was only in the medium extreme of the mountain river tier, so how could he possibly have removed the seal on the others? Furthermore, there had been a lapse of memory at a crucial point, and when their memories reappeared, their cultivation level had suddenly recovered. Strange, very strange, suddenly disappearing. Could it be a spatial god tool? He showed an expression of shock. It was impossible for others to immediately think of that, but elites of the heavenly body tier had extensive knowledge, and naturally could not be compared to ordinary people. Chapter 1069. No. The Nine Flames Heavenly King immediately shook his head. Even if it's a spatial god tool, it can't possibly completely disappear. Spatial god tools also have form. What kind of secret technique is this? Where did this person come from? He murmured, the Nine Demon Sword is of great importance, and there can't be any mistakes. Furthermore, it's already at this critical juncture, and the day of harvest is close at hand, so it can't be destroyed by others. Could it be that the news was leaked and attracted the attention of other elites? But with the strength of our empire, aside from the Chaotic Stars Majestic Empire and Jade Drop Majestic Empire, who else has the right to covet our things? If it's the Chaotic Stars Majestic Empire, they should have sent a large army now, and definitely not a mere mountain river tier cultivator. Strange, I can't figure it out. However, the blood sacrifice is also coming to an end. Tomorrow my brother will come and personally harvest the Nine Demon Sword. As long as we survive this day, with the Nine Demon Sword in hand, who do we need to fear? He stopped thinking to himself and swept his gaze over everyone. He said, continue the blood sacrifice, there can be no mistakes. Yes, Your Highness. The Nine Flames Heavenly King personally stood guard, and the blood sacrifice continued. Now who could escape alive? Fuck. Ling Han was also speechless. If there were only elites at the Sun Moon tier here, he could still think of a way to escape. However, there was a supreme elite at the heavenly body tier, or perhaps even at the high extreme standing guard here. Moreover, it was obvious that he had become suspicious. If he rashly left the Black Tower, he would definitely be suppressed at the first instant. One definitely couldn't doubt the strength of an elite of the heavenly body tier. Try. Ling Han tossed out the corpse of a guard. Shua, the Nine Flames Heavenly King, immediately appeared. His gaze fixed on that corpse as if flowers were growing on it. True enough, this guy's divine sense enveloped the whole altar. The slightest bit of abnormality would cause him to react. Little guy, how long do you want to hide? The Nine Flames Heavenly King laughed. I don't know what secret technique you used to hide your tracks, but you are only in the mountain river tier, so how can you hide in front of me? He paused and continued, I'll give you a chance. Show yourself and I can spare your life. In fact, it is not impossible to take you as a battle servant. For an expert like him, taking someone as a battle servant was not a humiliation, but a supreme honor. Generally speaking, only elites at the consummate level of the Sun Moon tier were qualified to break through to the heavenly body tier. Moreover, they had to be astonishingly talented, and were qualified to break through to the heavenly body tier. Ling Han naturally paid no attention to him. The Nine Flames Heavenly King revealed a trace of anger, and said coldly, Since you insist on refusing a toast only to drink a forfeit, this king shall fulfill your wish. Boom! The nine flames behind him suddenly blazed, forming a divine flame that set the surrounding area ablaze. The stone slabs were quickly burned red and began to melt. However, no one showed up. The Nine Flames Heavenly King couldn't help but be astonished. It should be known that from the moment the commotion was made to the moment he appeared, not even 1/100th of a heartbeat had passed. He could conclude that it was absolutely impossible for the other party to have escaped, and had definitely used some kind of secret technique to conceal himself in the vicinity. But under the burning of his 9 flames, no one appeared. It's incredible. Even if his opponent was also in the heavenly body tier, under the burning of his 9 flames, he would have to channel his full power to resist. Otherwise, it would be an act of seeking death. However, as long as there was resistance, there would definitely be elemental energy undulations, and he would be able to detect it immediately. Had he seen a ghost? The corpse had definitely been thrown out from a spatial spirit tool. Hold on. He searched carefully, but did not discover anything that looked like a spatial god tool in the vicinity. Though he had never seen such a precious treasure before, he assumed that it should be similar to a spatial spirit tool, being made in the form of rings, necklaces, jade bottles, and the like. But here there wasn't even a single pebble. The Nine Flames Heavenly King was about to go mad. He had fought in innumerable tough battles, large and small, in his life, and had also entered and exited dangerous historical sites. His abilities were completely honed through hard work, but the present situation caused him to be completely dumbfounded. Humph, but at least this proves one thing. This person's abilities are indeed weak, and he isn't pretending to be in the mountain river tier. That's why he doesn't dare to exchange blows with me, and doesn't even dare to show his face. That's because he also knows that the moment he appears, he will be suppressed by me. Then, no matter what, as long as Imperial Brother comes tomorrow and collects the 9 demon swords, so what if I announce the secret of this place to the whole world? We are destined to be invincible. He seemed to deliberately let Ling Han hear him. These words were not spoken softly, and he did not use his origin power to deliberately suppress them. Otherwise, those with lower abilities would clearly be able to hear him, but would not be able to hear a single word clearly. The 9 demons sword. Ling Han was astonished. Was this the treasure that they were plotting for? He asked the Azura Demon Emperor, and the latter naturally could only shake his head. He was not a person of this realm at all. Conversely, when he mentioned it to that small dog, he started barking, appearing to be very excited. You know. Ling Han was slightly surprised. He had not thought that even a dog would know. I know. The small dog looked incredibly shocked. Then why don't you hurry up and say it? The Azura Demon Emperor revealed a sinister expression. He really hated this dog. It actually belonged to the same clan as him, making him feel awkward even when he acted cute to curry favor with it. The small dog hurriedly fled behind Ling Han, and used its small paw to point at the Azura Demon Emperor, and said, "Brother, he's fierce to me." The Azura Demon Emperor bawled in fury. I call Ling Han master, yet you call me brother. Aren't you taking advantage of me? Ling Han smiled. Why were there so many unreliable people around him? He sat down cross-legged and said, Don't keep me in suspense, tell me about the 9-demon sword. All right. The small dog did not dare to disobey Ling Han. After organizing its thoughts, it said, according to the ancient legends, in the ancient ancestors of the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire, possibly several 100 million years ago, there was once a supreme elite who forged a divine sword, and that was the 9-demon sword. This elite of the Chong clan wielded the 9-demon sword and swept through the world, and was known to be invincible. But later, an elite from beyond the stars suddenly arrived here, and a great battle erupted between him and the elite of the Chong clan. The result was that the elite of the Chong clan should have been defeated, and the 9-demon sword has disappeared since then. It is said that this 9-demon sword is an eternal river tier level god tool. Who? The Azura demon emperor instantly spluttered. To him, Sun Moon tier was already high above, and Heavenly Body tier was invincible. Now, another eternal river tier level god tool had appeared. How could he not pale with shock? Yet Ling Han was even more curious about the origins of this small dog, and said, You know quite a lot. Though our clan is not considered powerful, we love to collect information about the major events of the past. What more such an important event? The small dog said. Unfortunately, I am still too young, and the information I have come into contact with is limited. It was still a knowledgeable dog. Ling Han speculated. The Chong clan should have lost the 9-demon sword, but after countless years of searching, they finally found the location of the 9-demon sword. But because the 9-demon sword is an eternal river tier level god tool, at least a level 13 god tool, they could not immediately retrieve it, and had to use the method of blood sacrifice to erase the murderous aura on it. Chapter 1070. Now the truth was out. Everything could be strung together, and there was a perfect explanation. But the problem was still serious, because Ling Han had not been able to stop the process of the blood sacrifice. The Chong clan was still acting according to plan. Tomorrow, the Eternity Sky Emperor would come personally and take away the 9-demon sword. This was a god tool that was at least level 13. Once its might was unleashed, killing Heavenly Body tier elites would be child's play. The Eternity Sky Majestic Empire would unify the joint peace planet, and there would be no more opponents. No wonder they were so deranged and carried out such a large-scale blood sacrifice. It was because they would be invincible after obtaining the 9-demon sword. So what need was there for them to care about the criticism of others? Ling Han was slightly anxious, but he had no other way. Now that the 9 Flames Heavenly King was keeping watch, he would be courting death if he went out. There was absolutely no other possibility. My only hope is that Empress Luan Xing still has the Absolute Beginning Stone. This can absorb all attacks, and can even resist divine swords on the level of Eternal River tier. But the Absolute Beginning Stone is only so small, and can only protect a limited number of vital points. I will still be at a great disadvantage. What should I do? Ling Han racked his brains, but in front of absolute power, any scheme would appear pale and powerless. The 9 Flames Heavenly King only needed a slap, and everything would be over. Time passed very quickly. The blood sacrifice was in progress, and a large amount of life essence was being absorbed by the altar, wearing down the murderous aura of the 9 demons' sword. By the second day, one could clearly feel that even this altar was filled with murderous aura. This was not a bad thing. On the contrary, this was a sign that the blood sacrifice was about to succeed, because the murderous aura in the 9 demons' sword had been forced out, and what would follow would be a decline from its peak. At this time the 9 demons' sword also displayed a frightening might. Flashes of sword light flew out from the blood lake, easily destroying the prison on the altar. As the sword light slashed, blood and flesh flew. The might of this sword light had reached the level of the Heavenly Body tier. To say nothing of the prisoners whose cultivation level had been sealed, even the guards were no match for it. If they were struck by this sword light, the only fate awaiting them would be death. They would be directly sliced into pieces, and not even a complete corpse would remain. Yet the 9 Flames Heavenly King was not alarmed, and was instead delighted. He laughed loudly and said, as expected of an ancestral weapon, "It is too powerful, too powerful. It has clearly not awakened, and there is only a hilt left, yet it already possesses such might. After it is collected, its might would at least be on par with pseudo-eternal river tier. Then, if it is completely fused with the divine sword, it would not be difficult for it to kill low-level eternal river tiers. He was so happy that he revealed many secrets. First of all, this divine artifact wasn't complete. It was broken. Secondly, the 9-demon sword should have been broken into a few pieces, and the sword hilt was buried here. Thirdly, the Chong clan should have grasped the whereabouts of the other divine artifact fragments. In other words, this altar was not the only one. Ling Han's heart thumped. The question now was whether the Eternity Sky Emperor had gone to collect the other parts of the 9-demon sword first. Otherwise, the Eternity Sky Emperor's battle prowess could possibly have leaped into the pseudo-eternal river tier by now. This was the invincible power of the Joint Peace Planet. The sword lights interwove more and more densely, and even the 9 Flames Heavenly King did not dare to stay here any longer. It wasn't that he couldn't resist, but it was not worth it to do so. It would only be a waste of power. And the sword lights were so dense that the whole altar was very close to being destroyed. There was no need for him to consider the problem of Ling Han any longer. He was sure that if Ling Han was still inside the altar, he would definitely have been killed by the might of the God Tool. If he was still alive after all that, then that would really be too unreasonable. Hung long long. Finally, the altar that was as tall as a mountain collapsed, turning into a pile of rubble. However, the sword lights were still there, slashing towards the heavens and tearing the skies apart, displaying its frightening might. This was the moment when the 9-demon sword was at its most violent. Xiao, a figure, flew through the air from afar. He was tall and also wore a long cloak, but it was crimson in color, which danced in the air. Behind him, there were also 9 black orbs of light, but they were not flames. They were incredibly dark and eerie. Imperial brother. The 9 Flames Heavenly King stepped forward to greet him. The Eternity Sky Emperor, one of the 3 great rulers of the Joint Peace Planet. His entire body was entwined with the aura of primal chaos, and his features were indistinct as if they were continuously changing. However, anyone who saw him once would definitely be able to recognize him the next time they met. This was a unique aura, just like Empress Luan Xing. There were obviously not many people who had seen her true appearance, but they would definitely not confuse her with any other woman. The Eternity Sky Emperor stopped. His tall figure seemed to be able to support the heavens, and in front of him, even the heaven and earth seemed to become insignificant. His eyes swept over, and he said, "Very good. The murderous aura in the 9-demon sword has been completely released. This is the ancestral tool of my Chong clan, and has an inseparable connection with the bloodline of my Chong clan. Later, I will use a secret technique to collect it, and it will be almost certain." "Congratulations, Imperial brother," the 9 Flames Heavenly King said with a laugh. "The hilt is the easiest to collect. In future, after we collect the remaining 3 fragments of the sword, we will be able to make the ancestral tool regain its supreme glory. However, Imperial brother, the 9-demon sword has been buried for millions and millions of years, and it is originally a very ominous object. Now its murderous aura is soaring even more. Even if there is a bloodline connection, Imperial brother should not be careless." The Eternity Sky Emperor laughed loudly and said, "I naturally know." He showed an expression of pride and said, "When I collect the 9-demon sword, I will sweep through Jade Drop, sweep through the chaotic stars, and take Empress Luan Xing into my palace." Fine. After all this, it was still for the sake of Empress Luan Xing. Though he was filled with great ambition, wanting to sweep through the 2 great majestic empires and unify the Joint Peace Planet, his last words still exposed his true nature. He was filled with desire for Empress Luan Xing. However, even this supreme overlord was so infatuated with Empress Luan Xing, making it his life goal to take her into his harem. It was clear how great the charm of this empress was. Giving birth to a son without an asshole. Ling Han cursed internally, but now he could only watch helplessly, unable to do anything. This feeling of helplessness made him very dissatisfied. It is time for us to settle our grievances with the Jade Drop Majestic Empire." The 9 Flames Heavenly King revealed a sinister killing intent. "That's right." The Eternity Sky Emperor humphed, his eyes similarly seething with killing intent. Sword light filled the sky, endless and endless. The murderous aura continued to condense and disperse, reaching its peak at this moment. In the end, it transformed into a gigantic human figure, which fixed its eyes on the Eternity Sky Emperor and the Nine Flames Heavenly King. Imperial brother, leave this guy to me. You go collect the Nine Demons' sword. The Nine Flames Heavenly King said heroically. All right. The Eternity Sky Emperor gave a battle cry, and pressed his palm towards the ruins where the sacrificial altar was. Origin power condensed, turning into a gigantic palm the size of a mountain. With a shovel, a large amount of shattered earth was dug out. When the gigantic murderous figure saw this, it immediately smashed its fist over, bringing with it a terrifying divine sense attack. Your opponent is this king. The Nine Flames Heavenly King stepped forward to meet the attack. Thus, after sweeping his gaze around, he also turned and left. He had more important matters to attend to. After he had left for a long time, Ling Han finally appeared from the Black Tower to avoid being ambushed by the other. Though he thought that the possibility of this was not high, a mighty elite of the heavenly body tier actually wanted to ambush a junior like him. Ling Han parted ways with the small dog, and then drew out the cloud-piercing shuttle, hurrying towards the campsite of the Eastern Rain Nation. Because there was no murderous aura blocking his way, his speed was extremely fast. In a mere half a day, he had already flown above the furious river. The legends were not false. This furious river was indeed created by an elite. If it wasn't the ancestor of the Chong clan, then it was that elite from beyond the stars that he had fought fiercely with previously. Ling Han descended the shuttle. Who is it? Soldiers immediately surrounded him. Scarlet Heaven Academy, Ling Han. Ling Han reported his identity. These soldiers didn't dare to believe him easily, and hurriedly invited the people of the Scarlet Heaven Academy to verify his authenticity. Ling Han. Zhao Luan immediately ran out. When he saw Ling Han, an indescribably strange expression appeared on his face. He had ambushed the Golden Lion Nation, yet suffered a complete and utter failure. This was a huge blow to him. After all, this was the first time he had mobilized troops, and it was a disgrace to his status as the son of a great general. However, he still comforted himself in his mind. After all, the other party had hidden a few hundred Sun Moon tier elites, so his defeat wasn't unjust. Moreover, Ling Han had also been captured by the Golden Lion Nation, so he definitely wouldn't be able to escape death. Now, however, Ling Han had appeared in front of him unscathed. How could his expression not be dark? How could you have returned? He humphed and said, You must have defected to the enemy, and that's why you were released to be a spy, right? When these words were spoken, everyone was in an uproar. To soldiers, traitors were the type they hated the most. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, Zhao, which eye of yours saw that I defected to the enemy? Don't spout nonsense without evidence. Otherwise, even if you're the son of great General Zhao, I'll still bring you to His Majesty and explain things clearly. Humph, we were ambushed, and I had the protection of my treasured armor. That was how we managed to escape. What did you rely on? Moreover, you returned a few days later than me. Could it be that you didn't surrender after being captured? Zhao Luan said coldly. Since he hadn't been able to kill Ling Han on the battlefield, he would just make up a crime for him. Defecting to the enemy? As long as he had a solid foundation, there was no need to bring him back to the imperial capital for interrogation. He could be directly killed to uphold military discipline. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, Zhao, you're really good at telling stories. The situation was so dangerous at that time, and I wasn't at the Sun Moon tier, nor did I have any treasured armor to protect me. I could only flee in panic, and only returned here after taking a big detour. Naturally, I wasn't as fast as Zhao. Don't try to quibble. Zhao Luan pointed a finger at Ling Han. Ling Han shrugged and said, Zhao, you need evidence for everything. Otherwise, I will sue you for slander. Zhao Luan looked at him deeply for a while, and said, I will find it. He flicked his sleeves and left. Obstinate, self-conceited, and narrow-minded. Ling Han evaluated him in his mind. Then, he immediately went to find the ninth king. The matter of the 9 demon sword was too important, and he had to send the news back as soon as possible. Otherwise, when the Eternity Sky Emperor obtained the complete 9 demon sword, he would really be able to blot out the sky with one hand. Ling Han. Shui Yinyu came out to receive him. When she saw him, tears uncontrollably flowed out of her eyes. The entire assault team had been wiped out, and only Zhao Luan had managed to escape alive. This caused the majority of people to be very pessimistic, thinking that those who hadn't returned were definitely done for. Though Shui Yinyu was very confident in Ling Han, 1 day, 2 days, and 3 days had passed, and Ling Han still hadn't returned, causing her to be extremely worried. Now that Ling Han had finally appeared, she finally felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted from her shoulders. She felt as if her whole body was about to collapse. Oh. Chapter 1073. Ling Han walked over, hugged her lightly, and then said, "Don't worry, have you forgotten how many trump cards I have?" Shui Yinyu only buried her head in his arms, and did not speak. Feeling this beauty's worry for him, Ling Han was moved, but now was not the time to be sentimental. "Let's go find the 9th king first. I discovered an astonishing secret," Ling Han said. He went to see Hu Feiyun, and when she knew he had returned, she happily received him, saying, "Zhao Luan actually captured you into the assault team, making me worry for a long time. Thankfully, you're fine." Ling Han smiled and said, "Thank you for your concern, 9th king. However, I discovered extremely astonishing information among the enemy, and must immediately return to the imperial capital to report to Her Majesty." "Is it really that serious?" Hu Feiyun blinked her large eyes. The Empress was busy, and she still had to cultivate. Ling Han was only in the mountain river tier, so how could he have the right to see the Empress? Very serious." Ling Han nodded. Hu Feiyun thought for a moment, and made a prompt decision, saying, "All right, let's return immediately." If not for her introduction, Ling Han would not have been able to see Empress Luan Xing at all. She also had a fiery personality, and immediately handed over all military authority to Zhao Luan. In any case, she had always been a hands-off boss, so this did not affect her at all. Although Zhao Luan objected with all his might, could he leave it to the 9th king? Ling Han, Shui Yinyu, and the 9th king squeezed together, and immediately returned to the Chaotic Star's majestic empire on the cloud-piercing shuttle. When they came, they spent a whole 2 months, but on the return it only took 3 or 4 days, showing how fast the cloud-piercing shuttle was. After returning to the majestic empire, Ling Han parked the cloud-piercing shuttle at the city gates. No one dared to fly into the city, or they would be immediately shot down. With Hu Feiyun leading the way, they naturally had a smooth journey, and soon arrived at the gates of the imperial palace. Hu Feiyun had the female guard make a report, and after waiting for half a day, they were finally summoned. Empress Luan Xing summoned them in a side palace hall. "Big sister." Hu Feiyun immediately ran up to her with a distraught expression. "I've missed you so much." Empress Luan Xing sat high on the throne. This throne itself was about 1.5 meters above the ground. She looked down from above, exuding a supreme divine might. Her beautiful face was still shrouded in the aura of primal chaos, but her slender and perfect figure exuded a fatal temptation. "Greetings, Your Majesty." Ling Han knelt on one knee. Shui Yinyu didn't come with them. There was absolutely no need to drag her into this. She only went home with them because she was worried about staying at the front lines. After all, Zhao Luan was there. Who knew if he would lose his mind and do something disgusting? Empress Luan Xing looked at Ling Han coldly, and didn't ask him to stand up. The pressure from her gaze was like a mountain. At this moment, even Hu Feiyun didn't dare to put in a good word for Ling Han. No one could offend the dignity of the Empress. "You're in the army, so why did you encourage the 9 kings to return?" Empress Luan Xing finally spoke, a hint of displeasure in her voice. Ling Han understood that the Empress wasn't angry because the two of them had suddenly returned despite the battle at the front lines. Instead, she was displeased with his influence over Hu Feiyun. She actually returned just like that. He couldn't care about this and said, "I discovered an astonishing matter, and must immediately report it to Her Majesty. However, my status is low, and it's impossible for me to have an audience with Her Majesty. I can only ask the Ninth King for help. Chapter 1074. The battle ended, and when everyone returned to the imperial capital, Zhao Luan immediately submitted a complaint to the Ministry of War, reporting Ling Han's defection to the enemy during the battle. Zhao Luan was the acting commander this time, and his complaint naturally received the attention of the Ministry of War. Moreover, Zhao Luan was the only son of great General Zhao, and his status was quite respected, so no one dared to treat it as a small matter. Therefore, a vigorous investigation was immediately launched. The situation was indeed suspicious. Ling Han was very talented, and this was recognized by everyone. However, no matter how talented he was, his true cultivation level was there. He was only at the peak of the medium extreme, and even if he could surpass 5 stars, that was only battle prowess in the early stage of the consummate level. So many students in the middle stage, late stage, and peak stage of the consummate level were captured, so how could he escape? With the end of the battle, the captured students were naturally released. Some of them swore that they had personally seen Ling Han captured by the enemy for interrogation, and then he was not locked up with them again. Seemed like there were witnesses. False accusation. This is a blatant false accusation. Shui Yinyu was naturally furious after hearing this. She knew some of Ling Han's secrets. With the Black Tower, how could Ling Han be captured? Furthermore, Ling Han had discovered the Eternity Sky Nation's plot, and had the Empress personally come out. It was clear how important the information Ling Han brought back was. He was a hero of the Empire, and now Zhao Luan was using his position to avenge his personal grudge, and even colluded with others to frame Ling Han. What a despicable person, shameless to the extreme. Ling Han snickered and said, I stole his heart, so he will use any means necessary to take revenge. The more shameless and despicable the means, the more it shows his pain now. Shui Yinyu rolled her eyes at him and said, You're actually not worried at all. Zhao Luan was building up momentum, creating a wave of public opinion that Ling Han was a traitor of the empire. Once everyone thought that Ling Han was a traitor, then the truth would not be important. At that time, would the Shui clan still marry their daughter to Ling Han? Ling Han smiled and said, If worrying is useful, then I will worry. Who asked me to be alone and without help? You can ask the Ninth King for help, Shui Yinyu immediately said. Ling Han shook his head. The Empress of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire had already expressed her displeasure with his relationship with Hu Feiyun. If he went to ask the Ninth King for help now, it was likely that the Empress would really make a move against him. Don't, he said, Zhao Luan is just a jumping clown. As long as one person speaks up, then no matter how much these people jump, it will all be in vain. Your Majesty? Shui Yinyu came to a realization. My wife is so smart. If Empress Luanxing was willing to speak up, then with her absolute authority, she would naturally be able to resolve this matter easily. However, the problem was this only involved a mere 9th-rank military general. Would such a trivial matter even reach the ears of Her Majesty? The Empress naturally had a multitude of affairs to attend to every day, and she also had to concentrate on cultivation. She was the pillar of support for the empire. Without the Empress holding up the heavens, the Chaotic Star's majestic empire would have long since been swallowed up by the other 2 great majestic empires. Thus, why would the Empress care about such a small matter? Ling Han smiled faintly. Shui Yinyu did not have an official rank, and had never used power of the nation before. During the investigation, outsiders were allowed to observe. Because it was possible that Ling Han had committed a crime of treason, the implications were too great, so the Ministry of War decided to put him on trial in public. Of course, it was unknown whether Zhao Luan had added fuel to the fire in this. Perhaps he was more interested in Ling Han being publicly convicted. And with such a major incident happening, the gambling house was not content with its silence. It offered odds on whether Ling Han would ultimately be convicted, such as whether he would be acquitted, stripped of his official rank, or even executed in public. All of a sudden, the most discussed topic in the entire imperial capital was the matter of Ling Han's treason. Great General Sha's residence. Sha Yuan laughed loudly and said, "Tomorrow is the public trial? This guy is going to be out of luck. With so many witnesses, he will definitely be nailed to the pillar of shame. Haha, with such a good opportunity, if I don't participate in it, it would really not be enough to vent my anger. Yuan Long, go and make arrangements. I believe that there should be more than these few people who have committed treason against Ling Han," he said calmly. "Yes, young master," a young man immediately replied from behind him. "Ling Han, oh Ling Han, you really refuse to drink a toast, and insist on forcing me to make a move against you." Sha Yuan smirked coldly. "As long as you lose your official rank, coupled with the crime of treason, the only thing awaiting you is death. After I throw you into prison, I will search out all the secrets on you." Chapter 1076. Zhao Lun was really thick-skinned. While suppressing Ling Han, he didn't forget to flatter himself, and took the credit of the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire's retreat. In reality, almost no one knew that Empress Luanxing had personally moved. Thus, the Golden Lion Nation, or rather, the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire's sudden retreat, could only be attributed to the fact that their secret had been leaked, and they didn't dare to continue fighting. Otherwise, if the two majestic empires went to war, it would only benefit the Jade-Drop Majestic Empire. In that case, Zhao Luan had really made a great contribution because the entire assault team was lost, and only he had escaped, and exposed the fact that there were elites from the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire in the Golden Lion Nation. Originally, it was a magnificent failure, a rash operation launched without knowing the enemy's depth and background, but in Zhao Luan's mouth, it became a great contribution. This person's thick-skinned was indeed impressive. "Ling Han, do you have anything to say?" Nan Minyang asked Ling Han. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "Just as Zhao Luan said, I am only in the medium extreme, and no one took me seriously. Then isn't it very normal for me to escape? Furthermore, I also want to ask Zhao one thing. Since you clearly know that I am only in the medium extreme, why did you choose me to join the assault team?" This? Zhao Luan was startled. He didn't think that Ling Han would ask this in public. Could he say that he wanted to avenge a personal grudge, and borrow the enemy's power to eliminate him? If he said that, he wouldn't have a good ending. Not only would he be punished by the Empire, which soldier would dare to follow him in the future? Wouldn't he be afraid of being tricked by him one day? "Ling Han, don't try to change the topic," Zhao Luan hurriedly said. How could he let Ling Han lead the way? This was a trial of whether he had defected to the enemy, so why drag him into it? "And don't try to change the topic." Gu Tianchu nodded. He was naturally on Zhao Luan's side. "Ling Han, don't be so glib. There are many witnesses here that can prove that you were indeed captured that day, so don't deny it," Kong Chenghe said coldly. "Oh, then I'd like to hear how I was captured," Ling Han said with a smile. "Summon the witness." Kong Chenghe looked displeased. This brat really wouldn't shed a tear until he saw the coffin. One young man after another walked into the public trial venue. They were precisely the disciples of the academy who had joined the assault team at the beginning. Later on, they had been captured. Fortunately, Empress Luanxing had acted quickly. Otherwise, they would probably still be locked up in cages at this moment. Zhao Luan's gaze swept over them, and he couldn't help but reveal a hint of surprise. He had only found a dozen or so witnesses, but now there were almost 30. What the hell are the extra ones? "I'm Ning Ziming. I'm Ming Luren. I'm Bu Xing I am." These people reported their names one by one. However, some people only needed to think about their family backgrounds to realize that their elders were either Great General Sha's subordinates or Great General Zhao's direct descendants. Zhao Luan instantly understood that Sha Yuan was in the same trench as him on this matter. I really didn't expect this. However, with the two generals' sons working together, it would be strange if they couldn't kill a little outsider kid. I saw it with my own eyes. Ling Han was captured together with us, and I was even locked in the same cell as him. It was only half a day, and Ling Han was brought to trial, and then he never returned. If he hadn't betrayed us, how could he have possibly escaped from the enemy's hands and returned to the camp? Thankfully, Zhao brought the information back, and forced the Golden Lion Nation and the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire to retreat. Otherwise, with the traitor Ling Han acting as a spy, who knows how much damage the empire would have suffered. These people were all talking and lying through their teeth. As the saying went, a crowd's words could melt gold. With so many people testifying against Ling Han, who should the masses who didn't know the truth believe? Naturally, they should believe the side with more people. Traitor. In the crowd, it was unknown who was the first to call out, "Traitor." Even more people began to cry out, and it instantly formed an avalanche of voices. Even if Li Weiwei, Ji Yun-er and the others believed in Ling Han, their voices of opposition instantly disappeared amidst these furious shouts. Shui Yinyu clenched her fists tightly. As long as Ling Han entered the Black Tower once, it would prove that he couldn't possibly be captured by the enemy. But if the secret that he possessed a spatial god tool was exposed, who knew how many people would make a move against him? Though he was freakishly talented now, his level was too low after all. The left minister, the 7 generals, and the other elites couldn't possibly notice him. But once the secret of the spatial god tool was exposed, perhaps even the empress would be moved. This was a dilemma. He could either be labeled as a traitor, or be targeted by many elites. Either choice was extremely terrible. Why hadn't the empress come to help him? Could it be that in the eyes of Her Majesty, such a small matter was not worthy of her attention? Ling Han, what else do you have to say? Kong Chenghe asked menacingly. I have nothing to say. Ling Han shook his head. Then you admit your guilt, Gu Tianchu followed up. Ling Han shook his head as he said, I really have nothing to say to this bunch of idiots. All of them are lying through their teeth, and there is no room for communication at all. You traitor, you still dare to quibble. You have committed such a treasonous act, and you still dare to be arrogant. These witnesses were all filled with righteous indignation. They were actually called idiots in public. Ling Han calmly said, Whatever man does, the heavens follow. Ask your heart of martial art. Can you feel at ease doing this? He shouted out these words with the 7-kill subduing soul technique, which only reached the depths of their souls. It was just that it no longer had any destructive power. Suddenly, these witnesses all paled. Their hearts were being interrogated, and even their souls were trembling. Ling Han, you still dare to threaten the witnesses? Zhao Luan asked menacingly. Boom, a red sun rose up behind him, and the aura of the sun-moon tear spread out without reservation, pressing down on Ling Han. Ling Han couldn't help but falter. He could even be unafraid of the aura of the eternal river tear, but aura and aura were two different things. Now this aura was real pressure. A suppression of an entire major tier. This was a gap that no prodigy could possibly make up for. Ling Han immediately broke out in sweat. Ka, his godly bones cracked, and his face instantly flushed red. Zhao, are you trying to extort a confession? He asked coldly, unyielding in the slightest. In front of so many witnesses you still dare to quibble. For someone like you, so what if I extort a confession? Zhao Luan smirked coldly. Zhao Luan, you've gone too far. Li Weiwei couldn't help but stand up. Fourth young miss, I've offended you. Xiang Chengyun immediately moved. With a wave of his palm, Li Weiwei was instantly rendered speechless. This was the complete suppression of the consummate level over the low extreme. The Lord Left Minister had ordered for Li Weiwei to maintain her distance from Ling Han as much as possible. To Xiang Chengyun this was really good news. Thus he was very happy to be this kind of villain. In any case, he also knew that Li Weiwei would definitely not lay her hands on him. If he was hated by her, then so be it. As long as he could cling onto the Lord Left Minister's leg, it would be fine. Ling Han, it has already come to this. If you are still not willing to confess, then you can only serve with great torture, Nan Menyong said darkly. Chapter 1077. Ha ha ha. Ling Han laughed loudly. Sure, I'd like to see how you torture me into confessing. Ling Han, no matter how eloquent you are, don't even think of escaping today. Facts speak louder than words. You've done something shameful, so you have to pay the price. The Empire cannot tolerate traitors. Those witnesses had already recovered from the shock of Ling Han's divine sense, and were naturally happy again. They wanted nothing more than to rush over and press Ling Han's head onto the ground personally, forcing him to kneel and confess. Traitor die. On the stage, someone threw an egg. It naturally could not hit Ling Han, and was blocked by the origin power shield that he opened. Ling Han's gaze swept over, and saw that it was a sneaky young man. When he discovered his gaze, he immediately shrunk back, not daring to meet his gaze. Zhaoluan or Sha Yuan's lackey. Ling Han immediately thought to himself. This was purposefully guiding the public's anger. Sure enough, his smash caused many people to become excited. Some people were already prepared and threw their eggs, while some people were not prepared and spat on the ground. Although Ling Han had opened his shield, and would not be hit or spit by anything, there were over 1,000 people here, and at least half of them were doing something insulting to him. What kind of humiliation was this? If this spread, would Ling Han still be able to face the world? Zhaoluan smirked coldly. He did not care about the truth. If he could pin Ling Han to death with the crime of treason, that would naturally be the best, but even if he could not, just this scene was enough to make Ling Han suffer. Would he still be able to raise his head in the future? He had won this battle and it was a complete victory at that. A minor character without any foundation, what did he have to fight with him? Zhaoluan looked towards Shui Yinyu, and saw this seductive beauty clench her fists tightly, her beautiful face pale. He could not help but feel a perverted sense of pleasure. He was already tired of playing with Yang Luodan. Alone she had some taste, but when placed with Shui Yinyu, they were on a completely different level. You can't escape from my grasp. Men, bring the instruments of torture. Gu Tianchu shouted. With so many witnesses, his suggestion of using torture was not excessive, and it was in accordance with the rules. Soon 2 people brought over a huge grindstone. This was a type of cruelty that would grind a person like a stone mill. Every bone, flesh, and blood would be ground into pieces. However, the vitality of a deity was tenacious, and they could completely endure for a long time. Thus, the pain they suffered was naturally even more severe. Everyone's expression changed at the mention of this thing. Zhaoluan and Sha Yuan both smiled coldly. They were finally going to make this lowly commoner suffer. The witnesses sneered. Some of them had no choice but to do it because they had received orders. Some of them were jealous of Ling Han and wanted him to disappear. Now that they were finally going to succeed, they naturally felt happy. Execute, Gu Tianchu said decisively. Wait. At that moment a woman walked over. She wore a shining golden armor and looked like a goddess of war, exuding an unparalleled aura. Greetings, great commander. The 3 judges hurriedly stood up and walked out from behind the table. They all knelt and paid their respects to this female guard. Greetings, great commander. Even Zhaoluan and Sha Yuan paid their respects. The whole platform seemed to lower in unison. No one dared not to pay their respects. Chu Choshua, the great commander of the Imperial Guards, an elite of the heavenly body tier. No matter which identity she had, it would be enough to intimidate the world. In the chaotic star's majestic empire, the 2 of them were completely equal in status. Chu Choshua withdrew her hand and calmly said, I am going back, and will not disturb your public trial. Continue. After saying so, she strode off. Farewell, great commander. Everyone knelt on the ground again. Chu Choshua had left for quite a while, and the aura that was unique to an elite of the heavenly body tier finally disappeared. It was as if everyone had suffered a serious illness, and their expressions were all extremely ugly. Just then, Chu Choshua had deliberately released the aura of the heavenly body tier, and this intimidation was naturally frightening. If she had the intention to kill, everyone here would instantly die, and their divine sense would directly explode. Is there still a trial? Gu Tianchu asked with a slight tremble in his voice. What trial was there? Her Majesty had already issued the imperial decree, and raised Ling Han's rank, and even interrogated Ling Han. Wasn't this examining his own head? Did he think he had lived long enough to go against the Empress? After a strict investigation, it has been determined that the previous witnesses were all falsely accusing Ling Han, and the matter of him committing treason and defecting to the enemy was completely unfounded. Kong Chenghe looked as if he had swallowed a few hundred flies, yet had no choice but to announce the result. Ling Han is acquitted and released. In the future, this matter is not to be mentioned again. Whoever dares to discuss the matter of Ling Han defecting to the enemy will be punished for slandering a meritorious official of the empire. After saying so, the three of them left as if they were fleeing. They really could not stay any longer. Being swept by Ling Han's gaze was like a twitch on their faces, and it was very uncomfortable. Everyone dispersed, and very soon every detail regarding this public trial had spread throughout the imperial capital. Naturally, no one mentioned the matter of Ling Han's treason again. Even the Empress had expressed her opinion, so who dared to oppose her? In the chaotic star's majestic empire, the Empress was a true god, the heaven and earth. A word from her, a declaration from her, was superior to everything else. Ling Han could finally return to the Great Ling Empire as well. Previously, he had already planned to do so, but the sudden invasion of the Golden Lion Nation had disrupted his plans, and it had been delayed for more than 2 months. Everything that needed to be prepared had already been prepared. He also refined some alchemical pills and left them in the medicine store. He still had to continue earning money. "I'll go with you." Shui Yinyu knew that he had long since thought of returning. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "You are my wife, so you should indeed see those brothers of mine. Furthermore, after returning to the Great Ling Empire, it is also time for us to consummate our marriage. Give birth to a few more monkeys for me." "Fuck you." Shui Yinyu pouted coquettishly and rolled her eyes at him. Ling Han laughed loudly. The next day he left the imperial capital with Shui Yinyu and set out for the Great Ling Empire. They had the cloud-piercing shuttle, and unless an elite of the heavenly body tier made a move to snipe them, it was absolutely impossible to capture them. Of course, after arriving at the Great Ling Empire, it was also considerably dangerous because there was no elite to keep watch. Even if Ling Han was a 7th-rank military officer of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire, it would be useless. Who would care? But after leaving for so long, Ling Han definitely had to make a trip back. In the past, he couldn't leave because of his status as a hostage, but now that he had the chance, he definitely had to make a trip back to the Great Ling Empire. Only when the Great Ling Empire truly flourished could he leave with peace of mind to search for his parents, son, and lovers. The cloud-piercing shuttle streaked through the skies like a bolt of lightning, so fast that even the eyes of Mountain River tier cultivators couldn't catch it. Even if elites of the Sun Moon tier pursued it with all their might, they could only look on and sigh at their inadequacy. Half a month later, the cloud-piercing shuttle carried the two of them to the Great Ling Empire. "Finally, I'm back." Ling Han sighed ruefully. Though he was now an immortal, he was still more used to his original world. Wang. The great formation of the imperial capital was activated, targeting the cloud-piercing shuttle. However, this was only a shattering void tier-level formation. Even with the boost from power of the nation, it couldn't possibly cause any obstruction to the cloud-piercing shuttle. With a slight tremble, the cloud-piercing shuttle broke through the obstruction of the formation and descended towards the imperial palace. "Who is it?" Instantly, everyone in the imperial palace was alarmed. Chapter 1080. Fourth brother, you haven't returned after so long, causing some people to have wicked ideas, Mu Rongqing said first. Recently, when the government orders were issued, there was obviously some obstruction. Some people are not willing to stay put. The Rain Emperor humphed, his eyes blazing with killing intent. In terms of ruling and management of a nation, he was the most experienced, and also the one with the most killing intent and the most domineering among the four brothers. Ling Han smiled slightly. As long as he had enough strength, then everything could be easily suppressed. There was at least one advantage of being a vassal of a majestic empire, and that was that the nation's safety was guaranteed. It would not be easily invaded by other nations, and even if it was invaded, it could ask for help from the suzerain, just like the Eastern Rain Nation before. Thus, the possibility of the Great Ling Empire facing foreign enemies was not high, but if there was internal turmoil in their own nation, the Chaotic Star's majestic empire would not be so free to interfere. In any case, it would be fine as long as this territory was still a vassal of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire. This was an internal matter. and outsiders would naturally not interfere easily. Ling Han said, "Brothers, these are all small matters. Today is a happy day, so let's not talk about these things. Let's drink until we're drunk. Let's drink until we're drunk." Feng Peyun and the others were also generous people, so they immediately raised their cups and drank to their heart's content. It was rare for Ling Han to get drunk. When he woke up the next morning, he found that he was already lying on the bed, and in his arms was a stunningly beautiful woman. Who else could it be but Shui Yenyu? He paled in shock and asked, "Did we do that yesterday?" Shui Yenyu was both embarrassed and annoyed. She rolled her eyes at him and said, "Last night you were drunk. I helped you into the room, but you held on to me and refused to let go, so I could only stay here." What she meant was that he was so drunk that he did not do anything. Ling Han breathed a sigh of relief and said, "That's good, that's good. If the first time was so muddle-headed, then it would be too much of a loss." "Pa!" Shui Yenyu immediately threw a pillow over, smashing it into his face. Wife, is it because I didn't do it with you yesterday that you're not satisfied? Are you feeling resentful?" asked Ling Han with a smile. Shui Yenyu was about to explode in fury. This pervert, this damn hooligan, he still had the cheek to say such things? Shwa shwa shwa. She threw whatever she had in her possession. First it was the other pillow, then the blanket, then even the cup and the tea tray were hurled at Ling Han. Meanwhile, Ling Han quickly caught it and tossed it onto the bed. When Shui Yenyu discovered that there was nothing else to smash, he chuckled and pounced on Shui Yenyu like a tiger, pinning this seductive beauty beneath his body. "Tisk tsk tsk. I really admire myself," he said, intoxicated. "What's there to admire?" Shui Yenyu felt uncomfortable being pressed down by him. Her eyes were watery, and her body had also become as soft as spring water. "Under my hard work, you seem to have grown a little bigger," Ling Han said with a naughty smile. He grabbed lightly, and Shui Yenyu let out an enchanting moan. "Damn hooligan." Shui Yenyu's face flushed red. Why did this bad guy always like to grab her breasts? Weren't they just two lumps of flesh? The other parts of her body weren't flesh at all. Ooh. Her whispers were lost in Ling Han's passionate kisses, and she was soon aroused by Ling Han. She took the initiative to wrap her jade arms around Ling Han's neck, kissing him intensely. Pung pung pung. At this crucial moment there was a knock on the door. Ling Han was furious. Who was it? He was just about to eat this bewitching woman. "Little Han, get up and pee." Hellion Tianyun's snickering came from outside the door. "Fuck, I knew it was this old pervert." Ling Han sighed and looked at Shui Yenyu, who quickly fled. He knew that he wouldn't be able to eat a bewitching woman today. Moreover, this woman was super shy, and would probably avoid him as much as possible in the next few days. If he wanted to eat her again, he'd have to wait a few more days. Forget it, he'd take care of business first. Ling Han went out and called over his three brothers, Ding Ping and Hellion Tianyun, and began to teach them the cultivation techniques of the immortal realm. Because the Universal 8 Desolation technique was taught by Old Man Su, it was not good for Ling Han to teach them in private without his permission. Thus, the cultivation technique he taught Hellion Tianyun was something he had obtained from an auction. Although it was not a top-grade cultivation technique, it was definitely better than what he had obtained from the Scarlet Heaven Academy. Moreover, the cultivation techniques of the Scarlet Heaven Academy could not be taught in private. This was a prohibition. Moreover, Ling Han could not afford to exchange for high-grade cultivation techniques. "Brothers, you are not the main force in splitting open the skies, so your strength cannot possibly reach 20 stars. However, 19 stars and 18 stars are still possible. I hope that you can all cultivate to the point where you cannot advance an inch further, and then break through to the immortal level," Ling Han said. Feng Peyun and the others all nodded. They were all ambitious people, and naturally were not willing to become ordinary immortals. If they wanted to cultivate, they would cultivate to become invincible among their peers. This time it was not like when Ling Han had just entered the Chaotic Star's majestic empire, and did not have any cultivation resources. On the contrary, the things that Ling Han took out this time would not be the slightest bit inferior to the wealth of an elite of the heavenly body tier. After all, it was only a treasure at the peak of humanity, and no matter how expensive it was limited, and the Jade Heaven pill that Ling Han concocted was extremely profitable, earning money at an astonishing speed. Helian Tianyun's side. He was a descendant of the dragon race, and had the advantage of bloodline. He had only stayed in the immortal realm for a few days, and he had broken through to the immortal level by relying on his bloodline. Thus, he could not cultivate his strength to the limit, which made him feel some regret. Unfortunately, it was impossible to sever this life and live a third life because of this. Where would there be so many precious treasures for him to squander? Treasures that could allow the soul to reincarnate were pitifully rare in the immortal realm. Thankfully, the power of 16 stars was not considered weak. After all, the shattering void tear was only one part of the long journey of cultivation, and could not possibly completely decide a cultivator's future. Ling Han was generous with resources. He wanted to help his 3 brothers advance into the immortal level in the shortest time possible, and this was under the premise that their foundations were incredibly solid. Then he turned his attention to Ding Ping. He had taken in this disciple, but he had not taught him for a long time. This master was really incompetent. Thus, after reflecting, he began to train Ding Ping. Ding Ping was miserable. Inside the Black Tower, he continued to scream in agony. His cries were extremely tragic, and could practically make anyone who heard them tremble in fear. It was too frightening. In a few days, the reincarnation tree will completely grow. Ling Han smiled. This was his greatest secret treasure. Comprehending Tao under the reincarnation tree. One moment was equivalent to a lifetime. It was practically like cheating. The cultivation of origin power and physical strength could be improved through alchemical pills and natural treasures, but one could only rely on oneself to comprehend Tao. The reincarnation tree, on the other hand, could infinitely shorten the time needed to comprehend Tao, or in other words, extend it. Master, can I rest for a while? Ding Ping asked with a bitter expression. He was carrying a large rock, and on the rock sat Ling Han. It was incredibly heavy, causing his arms to constantly tremble. That was because Ling Han had used the divine patterns of gravity. Of course, it was only a tiny bit. Otherwise, Ding Ping, who was only in the spiritual infant tier, would not be able to withstand it at all. No, I have to run another 3 rounds. Chapter 1081. Ding Ping screamed in pain every day under Ling Han's training, but his improvement was also obvious. He had some kind of bloodline, or perhaps he was blessed with some kind of powerful physique that could increase his power by 100-fold. This was very terrifying. Just this ability alone could allow him to have battle prowess that surpassed 2 stars in the immortal level. Permanent. The difference in power between each subminor level should be about 10 times, so a 100-fold explosion could make up for the difference of 2 subminor levels. This also showed how big the difference was between each level in the immortal level. That was why there were so few geniuses that surpassed 4 stars, and 5-star geniuses only existed in legends. Ling Han wanted to squeeze out all of Ding Ping's potential, and teach him a brilliant disciple. For days later, the reincarnation tree finally grew completely. The crown of the tree reached 300 meters, and the aura of great Tao flowed between the branches and leaves. It was mysterious, powerful, and simple. Ling Han had clearly watched it grow, but it gave him a feeling as if this tree had already experienced the vicissitudes of millions and millions of years. The reincarnation tree that needed 12 trillion years to grow had grown just like that. The Black Tower was even more awesome. Ling Han sighed ruefully. His rise couldn't be done without the help of the Black Tower. Otherwise, even if he didn't die in his last life, he could only be an alchemy emperor now. As for martial art, because his early foundation was too pitiful, his achievements would definitely be limited. This reincarnation tree didn't grow normally, but was hastened by me using mysterious source power, so the effect is slightly weaker. Small Tower appeared, and explained to Ling Han, comprehending Tao under the tree is far from reaching the level of a lifetime, but a day is equivalent to a year. This was impressive enough. After another 10 years, the leaves can be plucked and made into tea leaves, and the effect is slightly better. Probably drinking a cup will allow you to obtain 10 years' worth of spiritual comprehension. Unfortunately, my source power has been exhausted again, and I can't hasten it any further. Ling Han was already beyond delighted. and said, "Enough, enough, this is already impressive enough. That's because you're a frog in a well, and don't know that there are many treasures that can hasten time." Small Tower probably let the cat out of the bag, and hurriedly shut its mouth. "I'm going to repair the Black Tower. Don't bother me if there's nothing important." As it spoke, it disappeared with a swoosh. No matter how Ling Han called out, it refused to reappear. "Fuck, I'm still the master. That's too disrespectful." Ling Han bared his teeth. This little tower was really too arrogant. "No matter what, I need to improve the strength of the people around me first." Ling Han brought Shui Yinyu, Feng Peyun, and the others into the Black Tower so that they could comprehend Tao under the reincarnation tree. This is crazy. At their level, the only thing they lacked was time to comprehend the Tao. However, a day under the reincarnation tree was equivalent to a year. What kind of concept was this? Even a stupid pig could cultivate to become a true god. Originally, it was the speed at which they comprehended the mysteries of heaven and earth that could not keep up with the improvement of their elemental energy and physical strength. Now, however, it was the exact opposite. Their spiritual cultivation had surpassed their physical bodies, and it was their physical bodies that were dragging them down. Fortunately, Ling Han was the Alchemy Emperor. If he couldn't keep up with his normal cultivation, then he could just ingest pills. In any case, he was comprehending Tao under the reincarnation tree, so he didn't have to worry about his cultivation advancing too quickly. However, the first to break through was Ling Han. He was already at the peak stage of the medium extreme, and now with the help of the reincarnation tree, his comprehension speed was practically like the speed of light. If an ordinary genius wanted to take this step, it would take at least a few hundred years. Even if Ling Han was a super genius, he would still need a few dozen years, right? But under the reincarnation tree, a few dozen years was only a few dozen days. Most importantly, Ling Han's physical strength and the essence of a demonic master solved the problem of accumulating origin power. With these two factors working in tandem, why would his cultivation level not soar? He steered the cloud-piercing shuttle and left the Great Ling Empire ahead of time, heading to an uninhabited wasteland to undergo the heavenly tribulation. Since there were undercurrents surging in the Great Ling Empire, and there were people who wanted to rebel, then he would give them a chance. Otherwise, if these ambitious people lay dormant, then the harm they would cause in the future would be even greater. Thus, Ling Han strictly sealed off the news of his return. Now, he naturally couldn't choose to undergo the heavenly tribulation in the Great Ling Empire. Advancing a minor level was practically torture for Ling Han now. He had to shatter his own body so that his godly bones could be tempered by the heavenly tribulation to advance another level. This caused him to scream repeatedly. If Ding Ping heard this, he would definitely feel much more at ease. This freak of a master actually had times where he could scream so miserably. Half a day later, the heavenly tribulation dissipated. Ling Han used a drop of indestructible true fluid, and his body instantly recovered. He felt that his power had skyrocketed, and his godly bones were incredibly hard, reaching the level 4 godly metal. Now, though I can't suppress an opponent at the peak stage of the consummate level, I'm completely unafraid. Even if it's a battle of attrition, I can still exhaust my opponent to death, Ling Han said with a smile. His defense and recovery ability were practically at the level of a scoundrel. As long as he couldn't be insta-killed, then his opponent would definitely despair. Aside from Ling Han, the Rain Emperor's improvement was the fastest. His talent was practically no weaker than Ling Han's. It was just that he wasn't as lucky as Ling Han, who had obtained the Black Tower. 2 months later, the Rain Emperor's power advanced to 19 stars of shattering void tier. The might of the reincarnation tree was completely displayed. The Rain Emperor began to comprehend the secrets of the immortal level, and with Ling Han and Shui Yinyu's explanation, with the Rain Emperor's talent, he definitely wouldn't need a few days to cross over. Of course, a few days of comprehension under the reincarnation tree was equivalent to a few years of comprehension. Another dozen or so days later, Feng Peyun's power also advanced to 18 stars of shattering void tier, and Mu Rongqing's was 17 stars. This could also show the difference in talent between the 4 brothers. The Rain Emperor and Ling Han were almost equal. Feng Peyun was slightly inferior, and Mu Rongqing was slightly inferior. But even so, Shui Yinyu was shocked. That was the power of 17 stars of Shattering Void tier. And the battle prowess he could display was at least 22 stars or even stronger. How many such geniuses could be found in the Chaotic Star's majestic empire? The tiny Greatling Empire had 4. Moreover, Helion Tianyun had also reached 16 stars, which was still very terrifying, and Ling Han's disciple Ding Ping was also a little monster. He could explode his power 100 times, and if he could also reach 18 or 19 stars of Shattering Void tier before breaking through, then after he advanced into the immortal level, his battle prowess could even surpass 6 stars. 6 stars, just thinking about it made Shui Yinyu feel terrified. That was because 5-star geniuses only existed in legends, and now there was actually a 6-star genius? Even Ling Han couldn't compare to him. Ling Han wouldn't be jealous of his own disciple. Moreover, power was only the most important part of battle prowess, and not the whole. He believed that if the Rain Emperor and Ding Ping battled at the same cultivation level, the one who would lose would definitely be Ding Ping. If it was him, Ding Ping would have even less of a chance to win. The freakish physique and recovery ability were unbeatable. Moreover, Ling Han discovered that his current power was becoming greater and greater. The 9 Dragons Tyrant Body Art and Universal 8 Desolation Technique were both supreme secret techniques, causing his physical strength to explode and his origin power to be refined. He could vaguely feel that his pure power had reached the height of 5 stars. Another few days later, the Rain Emperor, Feng Peyun, and Mu Rongqing broke through to the Mountain River tier one after another. The Great Ling Empire finally had a sliver of the appearance of a majestic empire. Chapter 1082. In terms of the number of realms he had surpassed, Ding Ping was the one who had improved the fastest. He had just reached the spiritual infant tier, but after 3 months, he had reached the Shattering Void tier, which was a total of 3 major cultivation levels, and a leap of almost 30 minor levels. Even in the immortal realm, this speed of improvement would make one's scalp go numb. Apart from Ling Han, was there a second person who possessed a reincarnation tree? Although it was only 3 months, Ding Ping had truly comprehended for almost 90 years. Of course, the reincarnation tree could only allow one's mind to comprehend, and the physical body would remain at its original level, so it couldn't really be counted as 90 years. However, if converted, it would definitely be over 30 years. Ding Ping was now full of confidence. He wanted to surpass his 3 uncles in cultivation level, and truly share Ling Han's worries and difficulties. The scene of Ling Han being taken away still lingered in his mind. He didn't want to be separated from his master in such a way. He was willing to endure hardship, and with talent and resources, Ding Ping naturally improved rapidly. On the contrary, after advancing into the immortal level, the Rain Emperor, Helion Tianyun, and the others' cultivation speed slowed down. It was possible that Ding Ping would surpass them or at least catch up. The faster his people improved, the happier Ling Han was. He smiled and said, "Third brother, you'll most likely be caught up by that brat Ding Ping. Eldest brother is also in danger, and second brother is the most talented. If that brat Ding Ping doesn't have some special opportunity, he probably won't be able to catch up." Mu Rongqing couldn't help but scream. As a senior, being surpassed by a junior was too embarrassing. "Fourth brother, you must give me special treatment, or else I won't let you off." He pulled Ling Han, and just thinking about it was terrifying. Everyone couldn't help but laugh. "Third uncle, just wait to be surpassed by me." Ding Ping still carried a giant rock on his back, which was inscribed with a divine pattern of gravity. He was now addicted to carrying rocks, and even when he slept, he would press one on his back. Everyone laughed at him for transforming into a turtle. There was another person who improved greatly, and that was the rock spirit. In this more than a year, the rock spirit almost didn't improve, and was still in the Shattering Void tier. However, with Ling Han's return, it naturally had rocks to eat again. After eating continuously for more than 2 months, it turned into a stone ball as if hibernating, and didn't move for many days. But just a few days ago, it finally ushered in a breakthrough and stepped into the divine realm. 5-element beings were different from demonic beasts. Demonic beasts could transform into human form after reaching the god realm, while rock spirits had always been in human form. It was just that their bodies were piled up with rocks. After entering the immortal state, it was finally able to speak. But the rock spirit didn't like to talk. It was still the same as before, and liked to bite the leg of Ling Han's pants and act cute. This made the Azura demon emperor feel very disdainful. You're not a fuck you dog, so why are you acting like a dog? Woof woof, he squeezed the stone spirit. Why was this guy always fighting with him? He was the big dog, okay? Ling Han didn't just improve the strength of the Rain Emperor and the others. He had also given the guards in the palace a large amount of spirit medicines, and their strength had improved significantly. However, they didn't have the right to enter into the Black Tower and cultivate under the reincarnation tree. After all, the use of the reincarnation tree was limited. At present, it could only support the cultivation of 10 people at the same time. Even so, the strength of the guards in the palace had also improved significantly. In the past, they were basically in the flower blossom tier, and now they were all advancing towards the spiritual infant tier. Moreover, this had all happened in a short period of 3 months, which was very astonishing. Dingping, go home and stay for a few days. At most, we'll be going to the Chaotic Star's majestic empire in a month. Then, who knows when we'll be back again? Ling Han said to his disciple. Dingping actually didn't want to go back. To him, the Ding clan wasn't a home. It was only the place where he was born and lived. But since his master had said so, he didn't dare disobey. So he packed up and set off for home. The present Dingping was no longer the useless youth from before. Instead, he was the personal disciple of the current emperor. His own cultivation level had also reached a considerable height. At present, no one in the Ding clan knew that he was already in the Shattering Void tier. However, the spiritual infant tier was still high and mighty for most people. Thus, when he returned to the Ding clan, he naturally received a warm welcome from the Ding clan. However, some people's expressions were slightly cold, and even unfriendly, which made Dingping's heart skip a beat. He naturally knew that there were dark waves surging in the imperial court now. There were forces secretly plotting to overthrow the Great Ling Empire and establish their own kingdom. He hated this to the bone. When his master had successfully split open the sky, everyone had escaped the persecution of the 5 sects, and avoided the fate of being refined into a human pill. Even his master had been captured as a hostage, but these people were actually ungrateful, and wanted to rebel when his master wasn't around. Putting aside the fact that there was such trash in the Ding clan, if there was, he would definitely get rid of them with his own hands. Dingping, come. Come to the side and say a few words. An old man waved at Dingping. His name was Ding Chong, and he was a powerful figure in the Ding clan. He was also an elder. When he was in the small world, he was in the flower blossom tier. At first, he thought that he would die of old age at this cultivation level, but unexpectedly, when Ling Han split open the sky, he also benefited from it. In the last 2 years, he had advanced into the spiritual infant tier, and could live for another 200 years. At first, he didn't have any ambition, but being able to live for another 200 years caused his heart to stir. 7th great-grandfather. Dingping had been influenced by Ling Han, and though he didn't have a good impression of the clan, he still maintained a considerable amount of respect for his elders. Ding Chong nodded, taking advantage of his seniority. In his opinion, no matter how capable Dingping was, he was still a junior of the Ding clan, and should listen to him. He pointed at the seat in front of him and said, "Sit." When Dingping sat down, he said seriously, "Pinger, it's been almost 2 years since His Majesty left, right?" Dingping's heart skipped a beat, but he didn't show it on his face. Calm and steady, this was what Ling Han had taught him a long time ago. He only nodded and said, "Master has indeed left for almost 2 years. Pinger, there's a saying that a country can't be without a ruler for a day." Ding Chong chuckled, and his old eyes suddenly shone with a shocking brilliance. This was a yearning for power, and this old man was like a little boy seeing a beautiful woman for the first time, extremely excited. "What do you mean, 7th great-grandfather?" Dingping asked after some thought. Ding Chong chuckled and said, "You are His Majesty's only disciple. Now that His Majesty has left and never returned, shouldn't you be the one to inherit the throne?" Whoosh, Dingping immediately stood up and said, "7th great-grandfather, be careful with your words. What kind of attitude is that?" Ding Chong flew into a rage. Was this brat trying to rebel? He actually dared to speak to him in such a tone. Seventh great-grandfather, you're drunk. Ding Ping flicked his sleeve and was about to leave. Stop. Ding Chong slammed the table. Ding Ping ignored him and continued forward. Aha, young man, your elders told you to stop. Didn't you hear them? A figure suddenly appeared and blocked Ding Ping's path. It's not a good habit to disrespect your elders. Ding Ping focused his gaze on the other party. This was also a young man, at most 24 or 25 years old. He carried a long sword on his back and exuded an astonishing sword intent. It was as if the sword was him and he was the sword. Who are you? Ding Ping asked in a low voice. The other party gave him great pressure, and his realm was definitely not lower than his. Shattering Void Tier. Chapter 1084. Ding Ping vs. Zhang Emo. In terms of cultivation base, Ding Ping was 6 levels behind Zhang Emo. However, after using all kinds of techniques, his battle prowess was not inferior to Zhang Mo's. In fact, due to his endless stamina and the endless power of the nation, he was able to outlast Zhang Emo by far. The two of them battled, and the Ding clan was quickly reduced to ruins. At least 1/3 of the clansmen were killed by the shockwaves of the battle. The more Zhang Emo fought, the more apprehensive he became. He had thought that he would be able to take down Ding Ping with ease. He did not expect Ding Ping's combat prowess to be so strong. If this went on, he might even lose. It drove him crazy. If he couldn't beat Ling Han, then so be it. After all, that guy was a freak. Even his master's master, and even the geniuses from the god world couldn't beat him. But now, even his disciple was so ferocious. How could he endure this? I really didn't think that not only is Ling Han freakishly talented, but even the disciple he took in can't be underestimated. A beautiful woman descended from the skies. There were actually 2 wings on her back, and with a light flap it allowed her to fly in the skies. In a small world, these 2 wings were not very useful. After all, one only needed to advance into the flower blossom tier to be able to fly, but in the immortal realm it was different. Only those at the heavenly body tier would be able to understand the secrets of heaven and earth, and be able to roam the skies. How many heavenly body tier elites did Joint Peace Planet have? Thus, having wings in the god realm meant that one could realize their dream of flying millions of years earlier than others. Dongling was an outstanding disciple of the Cloud Phoenix sect. Due to the spiritual chi environment of the immortal realm, as well as the fact that they had come by opening the sky, those geniuses had received the blessing of the heaven and earth, so they definitely couldn't compare to Ling Han and the others. They were more or less like ordinary commoners, and now they had all become existences in the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier. What are you saying? Help me suppress this kid. Zhang Emo said with dissatisfaction. Wasn't there someone who was full of confidence and said that he didn't need any help? Dong Linger smiled. Her battle prowess wasn't any weaker than Zhang Mo's, and she also had the ability to fly. Naturally, she wasn't afraid that Ding Ping would escape. You don't say. Why don't you give it a try yourself? Zhang Emo snorted. This brat's strength wasn't any weaker than Ling Han's. His monstrous strength was so great that even Zhang Emo didn't dare to take it head-on. Dong Ling did not continue bickering, and directly joined the battle. A long night is fraught with trouble. Let's quickly deal with this brat. After all, there are still a few Shattering Void tier elites in the Imperial capital. There's no need to fear Shattering Void tier cultivators, Zhang Emo said. However, we do need to be wary of that old dragon. Many seniors have already entered the god realm. If we join hands, that old dragon is nothing. Dong Ling attacked mercilessly. Her every move was aimed at crippling Ding Ping. In any case, they only needed a puppet to sit on the throne for the time being. Whether the puppet had cultivation or not naturally did not matter. As Ding Ping listened, his heart was in turmoil. He knew that the other party was purposely saying this for him to hear. His goal was to destroy his fighting spirit. However, they had never imagined that Ling Han would suddenly return. Moreover, he had only used a mere 3 months to create 4 Mountain River tier elites. At present, there were close to 10 immortal level forces in the Imperial capital. That old dragon was very freakish, and had advanced into the mountain river tier, so his battle prowess would definitely be astonishing. Tell us everything you know, the Sword King said. He wanted to understand Helian Tianyun's situation as much as possible, so that he could formulate a perfect countermeasure. Ding Ping did not hide anything, and revealed the information about Helian Tianyun from more than 3 months ago. It was so detailed that even the Sword King was a little surprised. You are too you spineless, aren't you? We didn't even torture you and you already confessed everything. The 5 sects also had some information about Helian Tianyun. They compared it with what Ding Ping had said, and found that Ding Ping was not lying at all. They believed Ding Ping's information, and thought that Ding Ping was too young, so he was afraid of death. Since Ding Ping was so cooperative, they did not make things difficult for him. Perhaps they could take him in as a dog in the future. After all, he was also in the Shattering Void tier. They agreed that 10 days later, they would launch an all-out attack on the imperial capital. In the last half a year, they had already linked up with a great many forces, and they only lacked the final blow. Time passed very quickly and 10 days had passed. Ding Ping obediently led the others and set out, opening the city gates and the main doors of the imperial palace. They quietly entered the imperial palace, and wave after wave of forces also appeared, joining the great army to seize power. After all, ruling a nation was definitely not something that could be done by a few dozen or a few hundred people. The troops soon gathered to the size of a few thousand people, their momentum fierce. Chapter 1085. A large group of people charged into the imperial palace, and the guards actually didn't even dare to resist, retreating all the way. This made the attackers all proud. They were too powerful, causing people to flee at the mere sight of them. Though the elites of the 5 sects didn't believe that the imperial palace's power was really so weak, they didn't care. After all, they had mobilized their strongest force this time, with as many as 37 immortal level elites. So what if it was Helian Tianyun? They could deal with him with 30 people, and the remaining 7 would be able to sweep through them. If it wasn't for the fact that ruling a nation wasn't something a few people could accomplish, they wouldn't need the assistance of these forces at all. They didn't even have a Shattering Void tier elite. One side was unstoppable, and the other side was utterly routed. Ding Ping naturally knew that this was Ling Han and the others cooperating with him, wanting to capture all the rebels in one fell swoop as much as possible. This time there wouldn't be any future trouble left. Not long after, this army pushed into the depths of the imperial palace, arriving in front of the Hall of Righteous Harmony. This was the center of the entire imperial palace, the meeting hall, and the totem stood above this hall. This hall was the symbol of the Great Ling Empire's power, and once it fell, it would be a great blow to the nation. Thus, even if they wanted to lure the snake out of its hole, they couldn't retreat anymore now that they were here. Feng Peyun, the Rain Emperor, Mu Rongqing, Helian Tianyun, and the others appeared one after another, standing at the very front. Meanwhile, the guards of the palace stood behind the 4 of them. They all drew their sabers, revealing their determination to fight to the death. A bunch of useless people, an elder of the 5 sects said. His name was Situ Jian, and he had been sealed for thousands of years. Even when Ma Duobao attacked the 5 sects, he wasn't awakened because many people weren't buried in the 5 sections. He was awakened in the immortal realm, so he naturally didn't know how powerful Ling Han was. He only felt that his juniors were too weak, unable to even deal with a country bumpkin. "Mutt, report your name," Helian Tianyun shouted. Among everyone, his mouth was the most venomous. Haha. So what if it's a descendant of a true dragon? Its battle prowess can only surpass 4 stars at most. Could it be that it can become a legendary 5-star genius? Situ Jian waved his hand. According to the plan, we'll first suppress the evil dragon's true dragon bloodline. That's a great supplement. Immediately, 29 people took a few steps forward and stood together with Situ Jian. They had naturally come up with a strategy long ago, and they knew who would deal with Helian Tianyun. Tisk TSK, 30 elites in the early stage of the low extreme of the mountain river tier. Helian Tianyun chuckled coldly. However, you are wrong about one thing, because I am not the only immortal level elite on our side. Feng Peyun, the Rain Emperor Mu Rongqing, and the rock spirit all took a step forward at the same time. They no longer suppressed their auras, and the pressure unique to immortals instantly enveloped the whole area. What? The 5 sects and their lackeys all exclaimed in shock. Why had the Great Ling Empire suddenly gained 4 immortal-level elites? This had greatly disrupted their plans. Humph, you people, how has the Great Ling Empire wronged you? The Rain Emperor asked. Back then, if it were not for Fourth Brother opening the sky, you all could only stay in the small world and wait for death, and be refined into a realm pill. But now, you people are actually mingling with the people of the 5 sections. Who are you letting down? Being questioned like this, many people looked ashamed, but even more people smirked coldly. As the saying went, a wise man submits to circumstances. Ling Han had been captured as a hostage, and the Great Ling Empire only had 1 immortal-level elite. Fine, now it had become 5. However, compared to the 5 sects, this number was definitely not on the same level. Then tell me, should we die together with the Great Ling Empire, or share the riches and honor with the 5 sects? This was the immortal realm, and they no longer had to worry about being refined into a realm pill. Thus, there was no fundamental conflict between them and the 5 sects, so there was naturally room for cooperation. This is a little unexpected, but you people have just advanced into the immortal level. Another 5 immortal level elites will be enough. Though Situ Jian was shocked, he quickly recovered. He wasn't the strongest elite of the 5 sects, but he was the most senior. Thus, he became one of the commanders of this group. Do you only have this many people? The Rain Emperor's eyes swept over them. He had long sensed the turbulence hidden beneath the calm surface of the imperial capital, and the rebel forces that had appeared now were also within his expectations. In fact, there were even a few forces that had hidden themselves very well previously, and hadn't given themselves away. However, was this all they had? It's more than enough to deal with scattered soldiers like you. Situ Jian smirked coldly. But before that, we have to first kill a disobedient person. His eyes turned to Ding Ping. The Great Ling Empire actually still had 4 immortal-level elites, but Ding Ping didn't reveal any of this, so it was obvious that he was deliberately deceiving them. Kill him, and it'll be a good sacrifice for the flag, Situ Jian said coldly. He was a radical, and thought that after the Rain Emperor and the others were eliminated, they could directly change the flag of the Great Ling Empire. There was no need to set up any puppets to make the transition. However, he was only one of the commanders after all, so he couldn't make a decision by himself. But now that Ding Ping had set them up, it just happened to give him an excuse to make his move. Peng Ding Ping was thrown out. Though his battle prowess was strong in front of immortal-level power, he was completely powerless. Kneel, Situ Jian said coldly. He wanted to behead Ding Ping in front of everyone. Pay. Ding Ping spat, not the slightest bit afraid. I'm telling you to kneel. Situ Jian raised his voice, his eyes sinister. He released the aura unique to immortals, wanting to crush Ding Ping's spirit and make him submit. Are you threatening my disciple? Ling Han's voice sounded. Yeah. The Sword King, Azure Phoenix Divine Empress, and the others all revealed expressions of shock. They had all suffered at the hands of Ling Han, and were extremely familiar with his voice. Instantly they felt their scalps go numb. Meanwhile, Situ Jian walked towards the source of the voice, and shouted, Who? Ling Han walked out, a calm smile on his face. Who are you? Situ Jian asked again. Ling Han. The Sword King and the others of the older generation, as well as Zhang Emo and the others of the younger generation, all exclaimed in shock. They had all been traumatized by Ling Han. Just now they had already felt their scalps go numb, and now they were directly trembling. Being able to frighten immortal level and shattering void tier cultivators like this, it was clear how great of an impact Ling Han had on these people. You are Ling Han? Situ Jian asked Ling Han. He had not experienced the Ling Han era, so he naturally did not know how terrifying Ling Han was, nor could he imagine it. Pa! His figure flashed and a fist shot out. Situ Jian's head instantly exploded, and he became a headless corpse. The scene was deathly silent. Although Situ Jian was not the strongest immortal among the 5 sects, he was still an immortal no matter what. He had actually been killed with a single punch. What kind of joke was this? Ling Han withdrew his fist, cracked a smile and said, since everyone is here, then let's settle our debts in one go. Chapter 1086. Ling Han had returned, and he was incredibly powerful. The members of the five sects had long since been traumatized by Ling Han's attack. When he appeared, they were already shivering and feeling numb. Moreover, Situjian's head had been blown apart with a single punch. This caused a chill to rise in their hearts, and they wanted nothing more than to turn and flee. Ling Han, the Sword King, stepped forward. Although he was a rising star in the five sects, his strength was truly extraordinary. Sword cultivators were known for their powerful attacks, and his battle prowess could definitely rank in the top 10, or even top 5. Pa! Ling Han's figure flashed and his fist shot out. The Sword King's head was also blown off. Gasp! He killed someone just because they didn't agree with him. How cruel! Ling Han, you've gone too far. You should know that our ancestral ground has elites of the Sun-Moon tier. The heaven-shattering saber said harshly. Pa! He had just finished speaking when his head was also blown off. He had killed 3 people in a row with a single punch, without any hesitation or mercy. How decisive was he? The members of the five sects were all scared. They didn't even see how Situjian and the others died. They only saw his figure flash and they died one after another. If it had been them, they definitely wouldn't have been able to block or dodge it. Too terrifying. Zhang Mo and the others of the younger generation were all shivering in fear. It had only been 2 years, and Ling Han had grown to such a terrifying level. What cultivation level are you at now? The Azure Phoenix Divine Empress asked with a bitter expression. I've improved very little. It's a bit embarrassing to say it. Ling Han smiled. High extreme of the mountain river tier. Just advanced into the early stage. Pooh! Everyone spluttered. You're showing off, you must be. 2 years ago they had just opened the sky, and everyone started from the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier. However, the members of the five sects still had cultivation techniques from the immortal realm, and only 37 people broke through to the immortal level. But Ling Han? He was really helpless and he was even captured as a hostage. Are you sure you're really going to be a hostage, and not a slave to Grandpa Ma? Run! Someone shouted first, and immediately, everyone scattered like birds and beasts. The members of the five sects were all too aware of how powerful immortals were, and they were even more aware that the difference between each subminor level was like the difference between heaven and earth. Thus, one-star geniuses were all worthy of praise. However, Ling Han had actually advanced to the high extreme now. This was an absolute suppression. To say nothing of the fact that there were only 37 of them, even if there were 370 of them, they would still be completely annihilated. Fight what? You're just sending yourself to death. Kill. Meanwhile, the morale of the Great Ling Empire's side was boiling. Everyone moved, especially the Rain Emperor and the other immortal level elites. They had just broken through to this cultivation level, and their hands were very itchy. Let's go. Azure Phoenix Divine Empress grabbed Dong Ling and a pair of wings unfurled behind her. She and Dong Ling both had a special bloodline, and could fly at the mountain river tier, which gave them a great advantage. The Rain Emperor threw a furious punch, and though the Azure Phoenix Divine Empress was barely able to withstand it, she was still sent flying into the skies after all. Now, who could still stop them from leaving? Ling Han, just you wait. Once I find the way back, it'll be the time for the elites of the five sects to take your life. Azure Phoenix Divine Empress said harshly. She knew that these 30-odd immortal level elites were not enough in front of the high extreme. This wasn't a battle, but a one-sided massacre. Like wolves and tigers, the guards charged forward and took these traitors down, all of them deliberately punching and kicking them. These guards naturally hated these traitors to the core. How much had Ling Han done for the lower realm? And they actually dared to rebel while he was away as a hostage. Fuck, they really wanted to kill this bunch of beasts that gave birth to sons without assholes right now. Ling Han sent a message through the totem, announcing his return, and also recounting the whole story of this rebellion. His voice boomed and spread to every corner of the Great Ling Empire. Long live the Emperor! His Majesty has returned. The common people were all cheering endlessly. They didn't care who was the emperor. As long as their lives were good, then that was a good emperor. Ling Han freed them from the fate of becoming a realm pill. This was a life-saving grace. He brought them to the immortal realm, where spiritual qi was abundant. Although not everyone could cultivate in such an environment, not only would they not get sick, their lifespan would also be extended, and living to at least 100 years wouldn't be a problem. This was also a great grace. Who wouldn't respect and love such a good emperor? There were actually heartless beasts that wanted to seize power. Hey! Many people brought eggs, apples, and oranges, and were going to behead those traitors at the Meridian Gate. They were going to embarrass them, and make them infamy for 10,000 years. Ling Han summoned Yu Kaiyu, Qian Wuyong, Hu Fengyu, and other old friends into the imperial palace. Previously, he didn't want to reveal the secret of his return, so he didn't meet with these old friends. Now that he'd dealt with the trash of the 5 sects, he naturally had to meet with these people. He began to deliver alchemical pills to the major sections. Chapter 1088. What happened? Ling Han asked. The student hesitated for a moment, then said, "Just now, I passed by the main gate of the Eastern Institution, and saw someone blocked by people from the Eastern Institution. He kept asking to see you, senior brother Ling. See me?" Ling Han stroked his chin. Who was this person? He actually went to the Eastern Institution to see him. Who didn't know that the 4 institutions of the Scarlet Heaven Academy were as incompatible as fire and water? This person kept asking to see Ling Han at the main gate of the Eastern Institution. Wasn't this a slap to the face? Obviously, this person knew that he was in the Scarlet Heaven Academy, but didn't know the specifics. That was why he had mistakenly entered the wolf's den. Did that person have any special characteristics? Ling Han asked. The student who had delivered the message thought for a moment, then said, "He was quite ordinary. Oh, he always carried a sword in his arms." Huh! Ling Han was startled. Could it be Jin Zhihui, the successor of the Sword-Forge Manor? He had indeed made an agreement with Jin Zhihui. If he forged the number 1 godly sword, he would personally deliver it to him. It had only been a year, and he had already completed it. No matter what, he should go first. Thanks. Ling Han nodded at the student who had delivered the message, then tossed a pill bottle over. The student caught it, pulled out the stopper, and poured out a dark green pill. He instantly looked excited. Senior brother Ling was too generous, giving a heavenly pearl pill for delivering a message. Ling Han strode forward. He couldn't be bothered to go around, and directly entered the territory of the Eastern Institution, then walked towards the main gate of the Eastern Institution. The clothes of the students of the 4 institutions all had distinctive characteristics. Thus, when Ling Han casually entered the territory of the Eastern Institution, he quickly attracted the attention of the students of the Eastern Institution, and they all stared at him. But they recognized who Ling Han was. Not only was his battle prowess outstanding, but he was also a 7th-ranked military general of the empire. Firstly, they might not be able to defeat him, and secondly, no one wanted to offend a genius with a noble title. Thus, they only watched and followed behind Ling Han as he walked towards the main gate. Seeing that Ling Han's target was the main gate, the students all had strange expressions. Fuck, don't tell me you barged into the Eastern Institution just to take a shortcut? Fuck, aren't you looking down on the Eastern Institution too much? This is a naked slap to the face. All the students were seething with anger. Although Ling Han had not said a single word, nor had he hit a single person, his slap to the face was still resounding. Too high profile, too infuriating. How could he be so arrogant? Ling Han, you're going too far. Finally, a powerful student appeared and blocked Ling Han. By now, everyone knew that Ling Han's cultivation level was at the peak stage of the medium extreme, and his battle prowess could even surpass 5 stars. Thus, his actual battle prowess was at the early stage of the consummate level. If one wanted to block Ling Han, they would have to possess this kind of battle prowess. This student was at the early stage of the Great Perfection realm. He could almost cross half a star, and his strength was still quite formidable. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "I don't want to take a detour. I'm just passing by. This is the Eastern Institution. The student shouted in a stern voice. Regardless of whether it's the Eastern Institution or the Northern Institution, they're both part of the Scarlet Heaven Academy. I can naturally go anywhere, Ling Han said. A sinister expression appeared on the student's face, and he said, "Since you won't listen to my kind words, I can only use force." He took the initiative to attack Ling Han. According to the rules of the academy, high-level students couldn't take the initiative to attack low-level students. However, who asked Ling Han to barge into the Eastern Institution? He had already barged into their home, so how could the clan leader not retaliate? So what if he had attacked Ling Han? No matter what, he was in the right. Ling Han clasped his hands behind his back. The instant his opponent's attack reached him, he suddenly moved. His two fingers were like swords, and a flash of sword light appeared. Fast technique comprehending Tao under the reincarnation tree. Ling Han's attainments in the fast technique had also reached a very profound level. One had to realize that more than 4 months had passed since the reincarnation tree had matured. In total, more than 120 days had passed, so comprehending Tao under the reincarnation tree would be more than 120 years. Even with a slight discount, it should be at least 50 years, right? With Ling Han's current comprehension ability, wouldn't he be able to grasp the essence of sword techniques after spending 50 years comprehending Tao? Pooh! Blood instantly spurted out of the student's chest. Ling Han didn't stop and continued to walk toward the door. At this moment, the student's body finally fell to the ground, and he directly fainted. It was unknown whether he had fainted from being beaten or from anger. Too powerful. The other students were all stunned. This senior brother was an elite at the consummate level of the Mountain River tier, yet he had been defeated by a single strike from Ling Han. How terrifying was his strength! Most importantly, Ling Han had only entered the academy for a few years. Most of the students in the same batch as him were still trying to break through to the battle prowess of 20 stars of Shattering Void tier. Yet his battle prowess had already soared to the consummate level of the Mountain River tier. This was at least equivalent to the battle prowess of the middle stage of the consummate level. Otherwise, there was no way that he could have insta-killed that senior brother. Instantly, no one dared to make a move. After all, elites at the consummate level wouldn't be so idle. They would be in secluded cultivation all day long. However, if Ling Han really dared to openly pass by, would the Eastern Institution still have the face to see others in the future? Someone immediately went to invite the other senior brothers and sisters of the consummate level division. They had to stop Ling Han no matter what. Very soon the main door was in sight. Ling Han walked over, and saw that there were indeed a few dozen students standing at the door, surrounding a young man. However, there was no longer a sword in his hand. Who else could it be but Jin Zhihui? "Return my sword. Return it to me." Jin Zhihui shouted loudly. Among the students at the door, there was a male student with silver hair. He was holding a sword in his hand, and it was Jin Zhihui who was shouting at him. "Senior brother Yang, what do you think of this sword?" a student asked. This guy bragged that this sword is the #1 divine sword in the world. "I can't believe it," a student beside the silver-haired male student said. "Haha, #1 divine sword in the world? What a joke." The silver-haired male student laughed loudly. He waved the sword and said, "This is only forged from level 1 godly metal. Although I can't tell what material it's made from, it's definitely level 1. Moreover, although there are some divine patterns inscribed on it, they can't be activated. It can't even be considered a level 1 god tool. #1 divine sword in the world? It's basically a useless sword." Jin Zhihui's expression was filled with anger, and he said, "This is the #1 divine sword in the world. You don't understand it at all. Return it to me." "Haha, although it's a useless sword, now that it's in my hands I can still joke around with it." The silver-haired male student chuckled coldly. His name was Yang Shuang, and he was a super prodigy of the consummate level division of the Eastern Institution. Press him to the ground. He actually dares to mention Ling Han's name in front of me. He's practically asking for trouble. Okay. A few students immediately rushed over and pressed Jin Zhihui to the ground. They forced him to his knees, and even pressed his head to the ground. "Let me go. Return my sword," Jin Zhihui shouted loudly. Ling Han shook his head. This group of people actually dared to treat a disciple of the Swordforge manner like this. How could he still ask them to forge swords in the future? He strode over and said, "Brother Jin, long time no see." He was releasing flames of fury. Jin Zhihui had definitely delivered the sword to him as promised, yet he had been humiliated by these people. This caused him to be furious. "Ling Han." All the students at the door blurted out. "You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure."